Hello and welcome to the 4Corners podcast. I'm Brad, joined as always by Matt and Shad. How are we doing this evening, gentlemen?
I'm doing all right.
Doing good.
Better than Netflix's streaming service was doing on Friday?
Well,
Did you guys
pixels.
It was just buffering constantly.
I didn't get either one of those. I got a third issue where it would just, the audio was perfect, but the video would just like stop. It was like a still screen. And so I would like just press return on my remote to go back to like the main screen where it's like watch live, like Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. So I click that and it'd go right back to it and it would be fine. What's that, Shad?
I think he's stopped.
Oh,
you know,
yeah, I'm doing a bit.
Press return, Shad.
I wasn't
press return.
I wasn't the only one that this worked for, but when I gave up on the TV and went with my phone, I could watch it just fine.
Weird.
You know what? That's not that weird because back in the day when I had New Japan World, like they would all, when I first got it, they made a big selling point that it's like, oh, like you can use it through a Fire Stick. I think I even bought like a Fire Stick, which I don't think they were crazy expensive, but I bought it just to plug that into my TV. It's like, oh, I could watch New Japan World on my TV. The app through the Fire Stick didn't work for shit, and it would buffer and everything. If I literally watched it on my phone or on my laptop, perfect. And it's because
Fire Sticks kind of suck.
Well, yeah, yes, but I mean, this was I don't have a Fire. I think I have it buried somewhere, but I mean, I watch stuff. I can watch a lot of streaming services through my TV because I have a Samsung TV. It just like you can easily download them, and it streams pretty fine. And I have a high-speed internet connection. I don't usually have buffering issues, but even so, like I think a lot of times, like whenever I want to watch something on my phone or like the laptop, it seems to work better than the TV. I don't know why. Maybe the TV, the apps or whatever just don't translate as well. But yeah, I didn't try it on my phone. I watched it actually live and some of those, but it didn't really ruin my experience too much. It was kind of annoying to be like, click return press, but it took like a second to do that. So I guess I came off better than a lot of people. Social media like Twitter was just having a lot of fun with everything, including just breaking over the cold. There was that, and there's the clip that we got of Mike Tyson's ass. That was
I missed that except everywhere. On Twitter.
His Rikishi cosplay.
Yeah.
Well, like it was just bizarre because he gave an interview and then he just like he turned and he like it's just his bare ass and it's like what's happening?
There was all sorts of production issues with it in general. But I was gonna say 4 hours of Morrow is just way too much for my taste. He was very annoying for a lot of it.
I am not a Morrow fan. I know that's probably blasphemous to some people who loved him when he was.
I liked him up to a point, and then like there was a point where he just became grating, and when left to be self-indulgent, he's like intolerable.
Yeah. There are some people that you need to rein them in because they will just into their indulgences, and maybe they're not trying to be kind of annoying or grating, but that's just the reality. Some people need a heavy editor or a hand steering things.
Yeah, and so the word on the street is they had over 65 million people watching, so roughly about a fourth of their user base was trying to watch it.
I mean, that's a pretty good draw, but they fumbled it really hard.
No, they did. That has to be an all-time. That has to be like an all-time fumble.
It was like Blizzard day one of Diablo 3, and nobody can log on to the servers. But bigger.
Yeah. There was some jokes going on around certainly wrestling Twitter, where they were like, oh, like, they're making jokes about how like day one of rostering it's going to be buffering like this, and my response to that, not being quite serious. It's a joke, but it being quite serious. It's like, yeah, I didn't know they had 60 million people, but it's like you're not going to have not that many people.
If they literally got a sixth of that, they would be tripping over themselves with happiness if they broke like the 10 million barrier. But
yeah,
like,
if they got a tenth of that, they'd be losing their mind.
Yeah.
If they got 6.5 million, they'd be freaking out.
No, I saw wrestling fans saying that too, and even before I knew the number, it's like, come on, guys, like, and I thought like, in my head when it was going bad, I'm like, oh, I bet like 50 million people were watching this, and it was just like, no, like wrestling at its like absolute peak of the 90s, I think Raw broke maybe 10 million like once or twice,
something like that.
At one of the partly at the absolute height of its popularity. It's like,
I think for like the Austin Taker rematch, I think is one of them. But like, yeah, like wrestling's a much more niche thing than boxing. It was kind of like a once in a generation type of like pop event, because like everyone I know tried to watch it. Like, and wrestling's not going to have that kind of pull. Like, no wrestling would have that kind of pull. Like, I don't even think a different boxing, like, they might do well for another boxing match because they had that first one, but like, even boxing's not going to pull that. And if you look at like the best UFC pay-per-views done is like 1 million something.
Yeah, it's because of, let's be real, it got that how great he was back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
If they run another boxing match and it's just 2 boxing guys, it's not going to do 60 like this. People I don't even think give a shit about Jake Paul, but it was Mike Tyson. Like the novelty of Mike Tyson, even at 58 years old, coming out of effectively retirement and having a match. I say match. I have obviously wrestling vision going on at him coming out to fight, even an exhibition fight against a guy who's claim to fame is like he's a YouTube guy who he's done some actual boxing. So okay, but yeah, like that was the novelty of it. Like you're not gonna get even like actually like the big name boxers of today. Like you're not. You could take it away from boxing if you had like a really big like MMA fight against 2 really big MMA stars. Maybe you could get that or close to it. But then obviously UFC is not going to go for that. Like they're not. They want to make the money, and they're not. It'd be something completely different. So I don't. Yeah, it's not really comparable. But I mean, you'd have to have something like you'd have to be Conor McGregor versus somebody.
I think you could do. I think you do. I think if they built off this and did another card in like 3 or 4 months, and they had something interesting at the main event, or even they got the those ladies back for a rematch to like co-headline, I think you could pop 20 or 30 million. Like it wouldn't be anything like the first one, but I mean, if you can pull 20 or 30 million people in for like
that'd be pretty impressive.
Did either of you see that fight?
I don't know how I feel about
Katie versus Amanda Serrano.
I don't know how I feel about the decision. I feel like it was really close to call, but the headbutt definitely had an adverse effect on.
It did. I have a controversial opinion. My hot take is that I don't think that the headbutt was intentional. And obviously the Serrano camp is saying like it was intentional, and there are a lot of people who think that she should have won, and I won't necessarily dispute that. I actually can agree with Katie winning, but not as a unanimous decision. I would have thought like split decision. First off, I don't think the headbutt was intentional, but it could have been careless. And by that, because I actually had like a conversation. Hold on, like I had a conversation with my wife about this because she's like, "Oh, it's intentional." She's like buying into it. I'm like, I am not that familiar with Katie. Watching her fight, her MO is the same, like throughout the fight. It was basically she'd duck her head down, put her fists up to protect her head, and then when Serrano would like try and hit her, like Katie would usually block the punches and then do like a quick 2 or 3 punch jab and usually connect. And that's why I think she won, because even though Serrano like wound up, I think, having like the higher percentage of shots, like Katie like consistently was hitting like 2 or 3 punch flurries like for like multiple rounds. But again, she like puts her fists up, ducks her head down. And while I don't think that her headbutt was intentional, I think she's careless because she's too busy like throwing her head down to protect it. And I think the crown, like her forehead, the crown of her head, something like clocked Serrano, but it cut her open in front of her right eye bad. And I think I think there was another headbutt, which I didn't quite see in one of the later rounds, that worsened it. I thought it was a punch that worsened it.
My thing with it is I'm not going to jump to it was intentional, but she was getting warned all night about having her head down, and I tend to think when you're repeatedly being warned about your head being down that you're fishing for contact like that.
Possibly. I think at the least, like I don't know that it was intentional. I think maybe that's just her MO, her style, and it's ingrained in her. So I think that as a fighter, like that's hard to just correct necessarily.
Yeah.
But I think again, you can be maybe if you're like you do this, you're throwing your head down and everything like that. Maybe that is how you're style, and you're genuinely doing that to protect yourself. But in close combat, especially if you're careless, because Chad and I were like sparring, whatever, and I'm just like throwing my head around.
Yeah.
I mean, legitimately trying to protect myself. But if I'm careless and all of a sudden I like headbutt you right in the nose, break your nose. Like maybe I didn't intend to do that, but I'm careless with how I'm doing this. I'm not necessarily paying attention. So yeah, that. And because she kept getting flurries, I could see like maybe like you award her on technical points, whatever. So I could see like split decision, but not unanimous. Like it's like no unanimous.
I don't
like,
know.
I could and it was close. I could see have gone either way, but
I don't know how I feel on the headbutting thing because, like I said, there was more than one, and she kept leading with her head, and I don't think you get coached to do that with your head when you're fighting, especially in boxing. Like, so I don't think she was like necessarily doing it intentionally. I think she was fishing for contact, though.
That's fair.
Especially when she got the cut too. But I don't know. Even if it wasn't intentional, she deserved the deduction. I actually think she deserved 2 points taken off.
That's also, I feel, fair. I think that was probably the most entertaining match on the card, though.
I like the.
That got a lot of buzz.
I like the welterweight one. I liked. There was a little too much. I don't know. I got a little annoyed at the clinching towards the end of the women's fight.
Vectron is saying that she was kind of doing like a weird peekaboo style, but he also thinks that she was staying in way too close, which I think that is fair. Like I mean, again, I could see awarding it to her in a split decision maybe, but these are valid points to say like, well, now I don't know that, not to say like she did it dirty, but
what I was going to say,
the initial headbutt, maybe not. Later, maybe there's some hinky stuff going on.
What I was going to say is that just because it's unintentional does not buy you a pass. There's for example, if you're playing football, American football, you don't just get a pass because you're like, oh, I didn't mean to helmet him. It's like it doesn't matter. So. Like on one hand it's like, okay, I get it, but then on the other hand it's like, come on, you've got to own, and as you were saying, if you're being sloppy, then there's gonna be repercussions for that. So,
and the problem in football too is if like a lot of those crown to crown helmets, like you're already not doing it right when guys make contact.
Well, it's and they've changed it this season to how you're supposed to do tackles now and that sort of stuff, and it's like, but then the way that you're supposed to do tackles now means that you're holding by the very nature of doing tackles or something. I don't really understand it, but
Well, and the NFL overcomplicates everything rules wise.
Yeah.
So we do have. So our main topic of the night is going to be 2 more episodes of USWA, and then we have 2 topics before that. So we're going to start off because this past week we got the announcement of the 2024 Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame class.
Right.
And
hold on.
Matt's pulling it up.
Do you have the list?
No,
Yeah, do you have the list? Okay. There was 9 inductees, which it's really is more than 9 people, but it's 9 wrestling.
And they come from like different. There's different segments to help people get in. So there's like a historical group, and then like some other other.
I don't.
Things.
Yeah, I don't have it broken down by historical, what have you, but the top one obviously Reigns. That's the big name in this class. But the other big name, the Young Bucks, who I'm sure people like Jim Cornette were very angry, and some of the people who think that, of course, like who for like years now are killing the business.
Yeah,
not happy that they finally got in.
Yeah, but see, this is what I say. That's what I say to anyone that's upset about Omega or the Bucks. Just shut the fuck up. Like they literally got indie wrestling popular enough for a second national promotion to start. Like you can hate them all you want, but like there's no one else in like the last 50 years that has been able to start a national promotion up from scratch like that.
And I would credit Omega and the Bucks as the ones who did that. I know there has been revisionist history by himself about it, but no, Cody Rhodes was not the main impetus of that. Like he'd have a factor when AEW started, like yes, but it was not like the Bucks and Kenny Omega getting themselves over on the indie scene, and even as obviously more in like New Japan Bullet Club, like that was really
and like Cody really didn't. I would say Cody really didn't catch on like big time until like the year they did like All In, the first one before AEW. Like that's kind of when he started like really catching on. Like because remember he was kind of like the ROH World Champion that kind of didn't work because I think where the revisionist history comes from is Cody didn't find his voice until about 2018.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the stuff the Bucks and Omega did was in that like 2014 to like 2017 and 2018 like sector.
Yeah. So, Cody hooking up with the Bullet Club is what helped propel his visibility. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, that's a smart thing to do, but that means that he was a part of a group doing it, and he was not doing it on his own.
Yeah, and he brought his elements to that, and it probably like he probably did add things to the pie, but I think they also helped put him over the top too. Because I mean, Cody versus Kenny was like the program in 2018. And I would say a lot of that had to do with Kenny Omega. And I would actually say, and people have made some good arguments, and I tend to agree that really if you really trace a lot of AEW's ratings and attendance woes, you can see like where Kenny Omega's health played a big role in that.
Oh no, he seems like he is close to a return. But we've talked before about the Trish and Sarah podcast, and I think they're fans of the Elite, and I think they amongst other people have made the argument that you should be pushing like the Bucks and Kenny Omega, and I understand that all three of those men have tried to take the attitude. It's like, well, we're getting older, we're in our 30s, like it's time for us to give back, and it's like, I appreciate the sentiment, and yes, you should be making stars and what have you, but actually maybe you're still young and your star power is still at a level that it's like maybe actually y'all should be like pushed heavily
I think
I mean, part of I think the reason why the whole elite angle didn't work out that well this summer because one, obviously, I think it was supposed to be the Bucks versus Kenny was supposed to be kind of like a big part of that, and Kenny wasn't there because he's been ill. But also, it's the Bucks. People would complain, and Tony Khan gets some of the blame, and partly maybe it's because he does have like a start-stop style, which is frustrating to me. But that's a separate story. We can talk about that, I guess, with end of year stuff. We're going to have end of year awards or discussion. But part of the reason why people complain, like, oh, the Bucks, like, well, they have a match or they do an angle, then it's like they don't show up for like 2-3 weeks. And then I was like, yeah, that sucks. Why is that? And then it turns out it's like, oh, well, their new contract, they only have to work like a certain amount of dates. And it's like, okay, yeah, you got the Roman Reigns. I'm a big star. I don't have to work all those dates, brother. But it's like,
work
yeah, but
their
maybe you should do.
be
You should
smarter
like,
with their dates. Do the angle, have them show
yeah,
up consistently for 4 months, and then let them go away for 2 months. That's how you do it. Like,
And then
yeah,
also, by the way, let them be dicks about the fact that they won't be there too.
or have them
Like,
do like
lean in on
recorded
that.
stuff. But I also think that was one of when they like started AEW and like the first like couple of months of Dynamite. I actually think they kind of dropped the ball with all of the elite, including Cody, because they all did jobs when they should have been coming out of the gate strong. As much as people would have bitched about that,
do people remember like Kenny Omega in like the first couple months had like a par for like he was almost struggling to put away Alan Angels. And no offense to the guy, but it's like this isn't even like one of at that point I don't think he had joined the Dark Order, but it's like he eventually part of Dark Order. It's like if you want to get one of the Dark Order guys, I wouldn't even have put him. Like try to get someone like Preston Vance over, who I don't think Preston Vance is great, but it's like at least he has like a look and he's big and way. Or try to get like Alex Reynolds, somebody I don't know, I don't know, but yeah, like it was like, oh, I'm gonna have like a 12-minute match with this guy and we're gonna go like toe to toe, and it's like no, like they just when he finally turned heel, what was the first thing he did to turn heel? He's no offense to her, like he squashed Sunny Kiss in like 5 seconds, and it had this like real like dick look on his face, like that was nothing.
Mhm.
And that was great, and that set up, and like it's like, yes, this is what people want. They don't want like, oh, they're, and again, I still say they're at the level. It's like you don't have to be like, I'm going to get back to the business. It's like, why don't you look? People like Chris Jericho is controversial, but it's like if Chris Jericho at like 55 years old, however old he is, it's like it's time for me to get back to the business and put people over. Not that he hasn't he actually has put more people over than people can give him credit for, but.
Mhm.
If he's gonna take that attitude, it's like, yes, you're in your 50s, like you've been a big star, you've done everything, like sure. But Kenny Omega, like, okay, you're 40, 41. The Bucks, like, you're in their late 30s. Like, you still have enough juice in the tank that you should be like the main focus. I understand there's lots of guys. That's AEW has what's the expression? Something of riches. Like they have an embarrassment of riches. Like, yeah, they have. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, they have literally. You can name 8 guys at least that should be or are in or could easily be hold the world championship effortlessly, and they don't even have to be like, oh, this is a struggle. Like they either are at that level because they've held it, or they're just about at that level and could easily be bought by people. Like Darby Allin. Darby Allin isn't quite there yet, but if like they put the belt on him tomorrow, people wouldn't be like, well, this is weird. Like, no.
They'd be fine with it.
If the belt on like hologram, it's like, okay, like he's entertaining to watch, but you haven't built him up that. But yeah, like, so yeah, maybe you do push them to the top, but I'm digressing. Like, I do think that
no, but like that having the Bucks job early to Private Party, that was a mistake. Cody's I'm not going to challenge for the world title thing was a massive mistake. Because it completely booked him into a corner, and like
that was a mistake.
And like I don't think he ever quite recovered from that. And I mean, it is interesting that I kind of think the fans in WWE are turning on him at about the same point that they did in AEW, and I'm not quite sure why that is. But his like WWE reign kind of, I mean, we talked about it last week, but it does perplex me in a way because like there's nothing outwardly bad about it or him. And I don't know why people suddenly, after being so behind him, are kind of doing the, oh, I'm bored with him.
I think the real reason is because after being people love Roman, so Roman comes in. I think he immediately stole all of Cody's thunder. Like Roman seems like the bigger star, even though he doesn't have the title, and everyone loves Roman now. And somebody even pointed this out on Twitter. It's true. It's like you just had Roman go away for like 4 months, and then he comes back and starts feuding with like Solo and everything, and it's like he's just gets to be a face again, and he doesn't have to have said, "Oh yeah, guys, I was like a unrepentant dick for like 3 years," but whatever. Like,
golly gee, I'm back like, now.
Sorry about all that. It doesn't even have to change his personality really, other than it's like, yeah,
they had him teaming up with the Usos like nothing happened on like one of those PLEs recently.
Yeah.
And it was just it just like boggled my mind because where I think like, I mean, Jimmy who cares about, but like when they did that, I'm like, I mean, like I think Jay is largely a failure, but I was like, oh, that is so damaging for Jay Uso. After you've been trying to like make him his own guy for like so long, and then you just kind of throw him right back in.
But Cody should not be like, yeah, let's let me team with Roman. It's like Roman stood there and was like fine with The Rock beating the piss out of you earlier this year, and all of that, and you shouldn't be like, oh, we're buds now. We're gonna get those other bloodline guys. It's like, no.
That's a wrestling. That's been a wrestling problem for a long time, though.
It is, but you could be smart about this. Like, what was it like? One of the most recent, like a week or so, a Dynamite or Collision, whatever. It was like Adam Cole was out there, and like Kyle O'Reilly was there, and I think Adam Cole was like, "Yeah, I don't want to like team with you, or I don't be good with Roderick Strong either." And it's like y'all were best friends, but Kyle O'Reilly's with Conglomerate now, and he's kind of like, "Yeah, y'all aren't trustworthy."
Yeah,
and like walks off, and it's like. That's smart. It's like, yeah, he's not being dumb. He's like, no. Like, I have reasons why I should not like you guys. So I'm going to go hang out with the guys who've had my back for the last, like, few weeks and months.
I've always hated that, though. So you can... Like, that's one of the things, as much as I love 1989 NWA, like, the only person that called out Ric Flair for suddenly being a face was Lex Luger, who was a heel. And it still drives me nuts when I watch that because that's such a wrestling thing, like where someone goes like face. And the only time I thought they did kind of a good job with it was NWO era WCW, where guys, if they came back, kind of had to, like Nick Patrick, like no one really trusted him for a long time when he came back. Like the Giant was the same way. You know, those guys were always viewed as a little sus afterwards, which I always thought was good. But it's such a wrestling thing where it's like, oh, well, I'm good now, and I'm kissing children and like all this stuff. That's actually one of the things I liked when Cornette and the Midnight Express went face when like Heyman and the original Midnight showed up. Is they would do their promos and stuff, and they were still assholes. It's just they were the people's assholes now, not like. Like that's the kind of stuff I like where guys it really just change who they're feuding with or partnering with. It doesn't really change their attitude.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like
if you want to
Robert Fuller in the USWA stuff we watched. Like Robert Fuller really was just Robert Fuller. He was just happened to be on the good guy side at the time.
So just to drag us back over to what this has to do with the Observer Hall of Fame. Roman got in, and I can't remember who else got in. Like, I don't have the list in front of me. Yeah, Roman Bucks.
Shingo Takagi in New Japan.
So people might take issue with that, but that's going to be a lot of grognards that still think All Japan is like number 2 in Japan, which hasn't been true for like 20 years. And Shima and Shingo were huge parts of Dragon's Gate, Dragon Gate, my apology. That's been the solid number 2 promotion in Japan for a good 15, 17 years now with those guys at the top, so they absolutely deserve to be in based on like drawing and both of them. I mean, Shima is a great worker, so is Shingo. So I mean, they really hit all those.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you noted, Shima is another one who got in. Paul Orndorff got in. Johnny Rougeau.
Past Johnny Rougeau, I don't know. He's probably in the historical thing. I meant to look him up, and then I didn't get a chance.
Also, Los Hermanos Dinamita.
Is that a team?
I'm not really familiar with their work. Yeah.
Did it say
Johnny Saint?
Johnny Saint deserves in. Yeah, he's Johnny Saint is
legendary British. Mm-hmm.
You know what's funny though is I am, so I was gonna watch him a couple years ago, and I watched a bunch of his matches, and he's okay. I mean, I like him. He's cool. I see why people like him. But I was watching like, oh, I kind of like this Jim Breaks guy that he's wrestling, or oh, I like this Mick McMahon. Like a lot of the heels he was wrestling, I was always like, oh, I like them. Like, and then I would go watch their match. Like, no, you're supposed to be watching Johnny Saint. So I'd drag myself back to watch Johnny Saint.
No, there's some entertaining guys in like the world of sport. We recently just watched obviously some Mark Rollerball Rocco,
who I think legit has.
We didn't watch him, but Marty Jones, everyone, Marty Jones.
Marty
Jones all over.
I will die on the hill that while he might not be the GOAT, that Rollerball deserves to be in the GOAT conversation.
He's again, he's kind of an underappreciated guy. Like he's a guy like a lot of people forget about, or
because he does. You know why? Because he makes it.
I haven't even seen a ton of his stuff, but what I've seen is amazing.
Because he makes it all look so effortless. Like I don't know, like Shad as a worker, seeing him. Do guys like that frustrate you, where everything just looks like it there?
I don't like it where everything looks too easy myself. I want it to look a little bit rough.
I meant more like their execution just looks like they're sleepwalking, like it's just their second language.
To me, that's usually just a sign that this person's like really polished, and so I can appreciate that. The only time it pissed me off is when it was Teddy Hart, because Teddy Hart's just a gigantic walking rap sheet.
Yeah,
but that's a different.
Or like when you watch Terry Gordy, and he's like 18 years old, and he's just like already amazing at it.
And I'm not frustrated. I'm baffled. It's like, how? What did you eat? How many sit-ups did you do? What kind of juice did you drink?
Yeah. Does it say who the individual members of that lucha team is? Because I looked them up. I saw it. Okay. And then was there anyone else in that list?
Bobby Davis, who I'm not familiar with.
I know the name.
Probably was in the historical, or I don't know if was he a wrestler or non-wrestler.
And then some notables. Kevin Steen and El Generico dropped because they were under 10%. Which,
I wanted to mention that there was a list of guys who didn't make it because they got less than 10%. They dropped off from next year's ballot, and that's like you said, Kevin Owen and Sami Zayn, both the Usos, which it's like they should not be in the fucking list of the Hall of Fame. I'm sorry. Like,
I mean, the Usos. The Usos probably dropped. I think the Usos probably dropped off their second, or like they dropped real quick but I mean they shouldn't have been on there. And then like
I know people love the Bloodline. No, people love the Bloodline. Like I will die on this hill. The Usos have, and I don't want to hear about like, oh, they're making the company's making money, not the Usos. But I will argue.
The thing is with the Usos,
there's never been a point in time where the Usos have been the best tag team in the WWE at any point. They're not even the best tag team in their company.
The thing is though, the thing with the Usos and the Bloodline though, is I could go drive like to the gas station in the middle of nowhere and get Jim Bob and Cooter and put them in the Usos' place, and it probably would not have made like much of a difference in like how the Bloodline played out.
I'm just, the Usos should not, especially given the fact that their career is still going, but they have not done enough in their career to be in a Hall of Fame. Well, they don't. Well, I don't understand the justification for it. If that was the case, then
it's an age
Jeff
thing.
Jarrett, Owen Hart should have been in.
It's a
it's a recency bias, is what it is.
Yeah.
Their career still being active is a big bugaboo that's been about the Hall of Fame forever, which we won't go into that because that's a whole can of worms. But them being on the list is not. There's no real criteria. They just were on the list because they were old enough and they met like the basic criteria. So the fact that they dropped off so quick is more of a statement of their place. Like Lasertron could have potentially been on the Hall of Fame ballot at some point.
It's dumb because there's not a good reason.
I would also argue that having met a lot of like close observer people, like they are very fed-pilled and have been for a while. So I think that affects it. It's like I'm sure if you talk to like a lot of those observer guys, they love the Usos, and it's like, why?
But I mean, it's like
y'all used to care a lot about wrestling, like the actual like craft of it, and the Usos are not good even in that respect. I don't care that Jey Uso has a fucking catchphrase and goes out there and dances, and y'all, because of vibes, like want to put the world title on him and love him. But it's like he's not a good worker, and he never has been, and I'm not tickled
by that logic, the Godfather. And by that logic, the Godfather would be in the Hall of Fame.
He would have a more deserving place because I guarantee you, like, different times, sure, but Godfather probably drew better ratings than Jey Uso.
Or money.
I'm just saying,
Jey Uso's, maybe he gets get like a 1.6 Raw, maybe. He's main eventing Raw.
But the thing is
Godfather probably came out there and wrestled like Dwayne Gill and got probably like a 4.0.
Boy, man, that rare Dwayne Gill call out, right?
The Usos, though, like I said, it's like the Baseball Hall of Fame, though. There's guys that have no chance that pop up on the Baseball Hall of Fame because they meet the criteria. And they're probably just old enough. They've wrestled long enough. That's why they got on the ballot. Like, but them dropping right off, like, is what they should. And I'll even say, as much as there was a little butthurt about it, I will say I don't think Kevin Steen and Sammy are Hall of Fame worthy. Like, I think it's fair they dropped.
I don't feel like that I have enough of a grasp of like their Ring of Honor stuff and things like that to make a fair judgment about them.
They've always felt like when you talk about the tippy top guys, they've always felt, even in their indie days, and I like both guys, but they've always felt like that level below, like the tippy top. And Steen has a better argument than Sammy does.
What are you saying, Matt?
I was just gonna say that, like, I probably would agree overall with that, neither necessarily, but I would say like there is an argument with Steen, maybe, because he has had like higher peaks than Sami Zayn.
ROH World Champion. I think
feel he's been a little more. I think he's been a little more consistent.
And I think
Sami Zayn.
His PWG run, he was a big part of PWG, right? As they were like really catching fire. Sammy's always been. Where Sammy's gotten handicapped, I think, is the El Generico thing. Kind of, it helped propel him and get him noticed, and it did draw a bit, but I think it hampered him. And then in WWE, his injuries plus size, I think, has hampered him even further.
Yeah, Sami Zayn got kind of reinvigorated a bit with the Bloodline, and I think his work did improve. But people forget, like, for like 2-3 years, like he was kind of, let's say, dogging it, but he wasn't the Sami Zayn he was when he first started the company in NXT.
Well, remember he had the
quality of his work, I felt, it declined
because he had the Shad might remember if I'm wrong, correct me, but remember he had the double shoulder surgery. Like, he was real screwed up for a while.
I know he had a shoulder injury. I don't know that he had it in both, but I think he had a shoulder injury, and then he re-injured the same one not long after he came back.
But it was a health thing. He was getting bad for a while, but like, but I'll tell you where Sammy, really doesn't get enough credit, especially in his own company, is how much he worked to make that Knoxville feud entertaining and work and get them like legitimate attention.
He worked a lot for that, and he bumped his ass off in that match.
Yeah.
Like, he worked really, really hard to make that match something.
Yeah. Now, my one complaint about someone that dropped off, though, is Asuka should not have dropped off. Like, she is a big reason that kept Joshi alive. I think she's been a draw in other companies and stuff, and I think that was a bad one. But I think that's also not enough people watched her that have votes. They might need to address that on the Joshi end.
I feel like that's also a recency bias too, because she hasn't done as much as she did in like years past. Like the last couple of years, she hasn't. Part of that's because of injuries, and because they focused on other women. But there's been several years, not like the last year or two necessarily, but there was several years, I would argue, she was one of, if not the best worker in the company. And you can make the case that she was one of the best workers in North America.
She wasn't until EO showed up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe not the last, like, 2-3 years or so, but
I don't know how I feel about that, because I'm
2016.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think
right.
of. Well, no, it's not. I'm trying to think of who I think is a better worker, Asuka or Kairi Sane, because that's a really tough.
Oh, that's a really.
Asuka's probably slightly better, but like that's a tough.
Kairi Sane is good, but what people had this criticism online, and I having seen it, I'm like, yeah, I get what you're saying, and I agree. Good. When Kairi Sane left the WWE, and then briefly went back to Stardom, and did like a handful, did like a little bit in Stardom, and then went right back to the WWE. It was like, it's like, she's one of those that she's a good worker, but it's like, you don't have the dog in you anymore. Like you've made a name and you're a good worker, so it's like maybe you put in your time, whatever, but you're also like, nah, I'm not gonna put in 100% effort. Like depending upon the match, I'll put 50 to 75% or so. So Kairi Sane's a good worker, but I also feel like she suffers from that. I don't need to try too hard anymore.
I think she's cashing out.
I think that
too, because I think.
She's not old. She's like, I think like 30, 31, 32, something like that.
Yeah, but that's when
why.
That's when you're an athlete, though. Like when you hit 30 is when you start thinking about when you're going to cash out, because that's when your body starts to. That's when people get real mad in football when you start talking about like physiology and like when people go in decline, and they really get pissed off when you start telling people that there are like. There are outliers like Tom Brady and stuff, but when a guy is 31 years old, he is like past his prime, even if he's still playing well. Like if you sign that guy to a 5-year contract, you're buying into his decline, at least part of it. And like you might say, and a lot of people are like, well, Tom Brady played till he was 45. It's like, yeah, go look at Aaron Rodgers right now and how much like he's declined, or like when Matt Ryan just fell off a cliff. Like as a player.
Look, we talked about Sting he should not have been able to move the way he did or do the things that he did in his early to mid 60s now. And it's like, yeah, you have to realize like someone like him, and even someone like Tom Brady, Tom Brady doesn't have to be like Sting, like a 6'3", 6'4", 200 and something pound dude, just big, jacked and everything. He doesn't have to be like Steve Borden in his prime to be effectively like a genetic specimen. Like Tom Brady, obviously there was a lot of money riding on him being one of the best, so he put in a lot of effort, his diet, I'm sure his workouts, etc. But it's like there is a genetic.
He changed his game a lot too.
It's a genetic. He did. There are things that he obviously did to prolong it, but there is a genetic component, because even all of that, like you can't still be able to go out there and perform at a high level as he did into your 40s. Like you can't without, you are just a a rare specimen. That's not most people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even in the small world of professional like athletics. Like you're rare. Which to bring it back to like the Mike Tyson fight, like at least 4 to maybe 6 of the 8 rounds were not. Mike didn't look good necessarily, but the first couple rounds, like he was moving, and it's like, oh, you're a 58-year-old man, and maybe it's just muscle memory, but you were moving pretty good. You're moving your head around, look really good, like a little spry on your feet. And it's like maybe you couldn't sustain it, but there are people. It's like they are of a different genetic level than other human beings. Mike Tyson looked in great shape at 58.
I actually thought
he looked better shape than I've ever looked.
He looked better in the ring than I thought, and I thought defensively I thought he looked okay. Like I was surprised at how good his head movement was and stuff. But I knew, like, especially like when I saw like the big old knee brace he had on, I'm like, oh yeah, like he's it's gonna be how long he can hold up.
Yeah.
But I do have a controversial opinion on this though, because a certain Pepsi man did not get in. What did it say? What his percentage of the vote was?
I forget, but there was something that I actually annoyed me because he almost made it, and I think he was off by like, well, let's say 5%. Could have been a little bit more, a little bit less. I forget.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond him, there was one other name who almost made it, and he was off, I think, like 3% maybe, and that's Cody Rhodes. And it's like, both of those pissed me off. I know you don't want to get in that can of worms. I think there can be a valid argument to be like, I don't think anyone who's still an active like worker should get in. Now, I would say, I think that I actually do personally believe that, but I would give a caveat if it's like, let's say it's like when we put Chris Jericho in. It's like, okay, Chris Jericho is still active, but he's like 55, and it's like he's not going to be doing this 20 years. Yeah, he's not going to be around too much longer as an in-ring competitor. Okay,
I think you could even argue
like Kenny Omega.
I think you could argue even like Punk could. You could say like, well, Punk's got a couple years left. Like we have a good barometer of what he did. Like I don't think like, because I think you could look at Punk and be like. I think you could look at Punk and be like, okay, well, we have an idea. Like, I don't think, like, we've seen, like, a year of him in WWE. Like, he's really not going to, like, set the world on fire past what he's doing. And we have, like, his past work. So we can prescribe a judgment based on that. But Cody, though, Cody just got the world title for the first time. And you don't know, like, where his star is going to go. Like, there's too much... And especially for Cody, like I don't think he's had like long enough as like a main eventer, especially in WWE, to really like.
This is just more recency bias rolling in, and people flooding the ballot box is what it is.
Well, this has happened before though, because they put like Kurt Angle in super early, and then he proceeded to do jack and squat for the rest of his career.
Which is why I'm going to stand by. I don't think anybody should go in the Hall of Fame until they're done. Let's say...
But you still wouldn't be allowed to put the Rock and Roll Express in, though.
Well, and that's fine. Because, that's fine. Because then what do? Is you can... once they're done, then you put them in. Like, immediately. You're sitting there looking at them, and you're like, all right, guys, all you got to do is say the word. Say the word, guys. Say the word. And then as soon as they do, you go for it. But I think a Hall of Fame induction should be based off the entirety of their career, not based off of, well, they're doing really good right now. It's like, no. That's because I'm scrambling for a good...
But let me ask you this, Shad. Let me ask you this.
Yep.
So let's say it's 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really need to see anything else of Terry Funk's career to put him in a Hall of Fame?
No. I am going to get... But the reason that I say that you draw the line for when their career ends is so that you get the full picture of what their career is. You can judge them on the merits of the entirety of their work. And that's what I think needs to be Hall of Fame consideration, is the entire body of work.
But see, my thing is, I agree to some extent, but I think there should be a cutoff, because I think there's a point where you can't damage your legacy enough to work yourself out of the Hall of Fame if you were like a massive star, which I think would be like the Terry Funk or like the Ric Flair, or, you know, even like Luger and Sting at certain points. Like, there's a point, I think, where you just need to, like, for the sake of, like, I would say marketing and interest, you need to start putting those guys in. And
so
I think
okay.
you can. I think there's a point where you can say, like, okay, they're 50 years old. They're not going to have like some massive run at this point. Like, I think we can start talking about putting them in.
But the reason that I say when they're done is because that sets a hard and fast boundary. I understand where you're coming from entirely. I completely see the merit why. The problem that I have with it, though, is then that line becomes very fuzzy. And it's like, oh, well, you know, based off of what Cody's done right now, it's been really, really good. And it's like, no, it hasn't. It's like, well, then his career's not over. It's like, well, no, but you put in this guy whose career wasn't over. But if you have a hard and fast line somewhere, then you don't have to worry about that. You can just be like, no, his career's not over yet.
That kind of, to make a point that bothered me a while back, but like back to that's kind of where I think someone like Dave Meltzer is office rocker. He's trying to make an argument, which he kind of did on Twitter. Like, oh, Cody's actually, if you look at the numbers, Cody's like better than Cena.
No,
he's not. Like, he's not culturally, he's not a bigger deal than John Cena was or is. He certainly didn't pop the fucking ratings on the TV that John Cena did. It's, you can't say, oh, the business is really good. Like, and just compare the business of the company and attribute all of that to Cody versus the brand of WWE itself. Like, I doubt that his merch sales are better than John Cena is, even probably maybe even now. Like, but certainly historically, like, you can't. But so yeah, it's not even just recency bias. It's
even
also
compare
like attributing
him to
like the hotness of the WWE now to like Cody, and so he always should be in the Hall of Fame. Like, no, he shouldn't.
Even compare him to Roman, though. Like, compare him to his direct peer in Roman, and I think he even comes up short. And like, and I would argue like Roman is a debatable draw, but like if you compare them, like, he kind of falls a little short of Roman too. Like, when I really think about it, like, I think he has probably, well, I was gonna say he has a better body of work match wise, because I don't think Roman's a great worker, but like Cody's not like amazing either. I'd say Cody's probably like got a slightly better body of work, but I don't think that's like a blowout or anything.
I think he's clearly ahead, but that's not enough to make a difference on the.
Yeah. No, and you have to be, usually for his criteria, you have to have like a year where you're like elite at least.
Yeah.
And I don't think either of those guys were, but like when you talk about like the business side, like, I would kind of give that to Roman. And why I would give that to Roman is because his story is a little more complete. Like, I think the bloodline is kind of the crescendo of his like career, and I think it'll go down a little bit for that, but like he does have that apex, whereas Cody still should be like in his like top of the mountain moment because it's his first title reign. And I think like that's where I agree with Shad, though, is like this is not the time to be talking about Cody in a Hall of Fame, because like his moment's not over yet. And like, you don't know, like, he could like business could totally crash and burn in like the next 3 months, and we'll be like, oh man, can you believe like they totally did this thing with Cody and like ruined their whole business? Like, that's why I think you would have to at least get a couple years out of this from Cody. But the other one I do want to talk about, though, is Punk not making it. I actually thought about it because my first reaction was I didn't like Roman getting in, but then I thought about it a bit and I was like, you know, Roman kind of deserves to be in over Punk.
I think what we have to do, or the way I have to think about it, because obviously I'm not a fan of one, and I'm not really a fan of the other.
I'm not a fan of either, so I was being objective, I feel.
I have to sit there and look at it by what numbers are available. I'm sorry, Matt. I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was just kind of like thinking out loud that, like, would I agree? I probably would agree because Roman has been pushed more as like the guy than Punk ever was, and
Punk, I don't think's ever. I think I agree with that argument, because where I think the difference is Roman, at least during the Bloodline thing, was having to stand on his own 2 feet as like the star of the company, and Punk at really no point in his career, more than maybe like the ROH summer of Punk, has never had to stand as the guy. He's always had Cena there doing the heavy lifting, and ROH he had Joe doing the heavy lifting.
And it is like, if he didn't make it into the Hall of Fame before his hiatus, what has he done since then that he should be in the Hall of, like, what has he done since then that's just so mind-blowingly awesome that it's Hall of Fame worthy?
I mean, I think we could have a discussion about AEW and the bounce there, but I think, and even Meltzer said it at the time, I don't know if you remember saying that, but I feel like he kind of, the bounce he got in AEW went away after a couple months. And I don't, now we can sit here and have that discussion, which I don't know where I'd fall on that if you want to talk about booking versus the him factor. But I also think like he's kind of been like a bit of a wet fart in WWE. Like he's
been hurt half the time he was signed there.
Like I think the Hell in the Cell with Drew McIntyre was well received, and one of their other matches were well received, but the first one wasn't. I don't think
so.
And you see a lot of people saying he's washed. I will say I think the Hell in the Cell was largely well received.
Don't you feel like that that sort of plays the Punk strengths? Not that he's like a hardcore, but he's been around enough and knows enough of like an old school style that he can big gimmick match like that. I feel.
I think it probably helps him.
A lot of people.
I would think at his age, and it's probably like those kind of matches are godsends for someone of his age. That's not even talking about his skill level. I just think when you're old and everything probably hurts, and like
you can milk between spots longer, and it's not a big deal.
And that like,
I mean, that was a plot point in the Darren Aronofsky movie. Is that as Randy got older, he started doing like harder and harder gimmick match stuff. So,
because I'm just spitballing. I didn't do it. Shad probably knows, but like thinking is like, if you're Punk's age, like, and you want to do like an elbow drop off the top rope when you're like 29, 31, like it probably hurts a bit, but you know you're gonna bounce back. When you're like 47, that you're probably standing up there is like, God damn it, this is gonna hurt so bad.
You hit the mat and feel like that you can't move because, oh God, that hurt, and it's like, you know. Like, if I was to do an elbow drop now and land on my left hip, then I would probably land that and just do the pin right there. Just move my arm over for the pin and go, don't kick out. I can't move. Like, my hip is so jacked up that it would just be like, nope, stay in here. And then when the match is over, I'm just sitting there on the mat being like, yeah, man, that was because it's going to take me a little while before I can get up. Like,
yeah. So, like, that's a good point about the wrestler when he was working the harder gimmick matches. So I bet that stuff is a godsend for him because he doesn't have to necessarily bump as much, and like you can milk a little more. But I think so. Shad asked a good question over the chat though. Is like, so what are the big things you would associate with both of them? And so Roman, obviously the bloodline, the Shield. And both of those were really big. I would say the Shield was probably slightly bigger for their time.
Well, and then consider how many nostalgia runs the Shield got. They got nostalgia runs longer than they existed as a group.
Oh yeah, like they got like 3 or 4 nostalgia runs, and then you know the Bloodline did help revitalize their business.
That is a good point. I would almost say the Bloodline, but maybe it's because I'm still caught in it.
Well, so here's
the Bloodline as big as like the NWO, but the Bloodline, what has been a bigger storyline in wrestling than a lot of stuff. So I wouldn't put the Bloodline on par as like the NWO. It's like this is still remembered and nostalgic like 25 plus years later, but like it's bigger. And I would probably argue it's for Roman, not necessarily all 3 guys, but for Roman it's bigger than the Shield. Mm-hmm. But you do bring a good point that they did do like some nostalgia runs of the Shield. And the Shield, when did the Shield like form and was like
2012, 2013, I think.
12? Yeah. So that's a decade, but it's also like it's kind of, to me, just generally it's odd to let's do nostalgia runs for a gimmick that was like 10 years ago. But look, Moxley has been with AEW since like what, 2019?
For 5 years.
They were done and buried in 2015 as a gimmick, I think. But here's my argument for why the Shield is bigger, though. So, the company was bigger, like with what they drew at the time. Like they do more money now, but like so when the Shield was at their height, you could still get 5 million people to watch Raw. They were still selling out for Raw. Mm-hmm. They were just still like a hotter property. Now I would agree with Matt. What Matt's saying though is that when you talk about in the whole of wrestling in the WWE itself, like the Bloodline is probably bigger, but I think in the general like base numbers game, I think I might say the Shield was a bigger deal.
And the other thing I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead, finish your thought.
Oh, well, to that point, I guess thinking along those lines, you should maybe we should look at it maybe as like Bloodline as an angle or a storyline. That would be like the Mega Powers Explode. We did a 3 or 4 part series on.
That might have been a 5.
Really became like Savage's journey from debuting as a heel and becoming a face, and then being a heel again, and the feud with Hogan. But that was really like a storyline, kind of an extended storyline. Whereas the Shield is more like as a gimmick, because look at like they're in the Hall of Fame obviously, but people still remember and talk favorably and have good opinions about the Freebirds. And it's like the Freebirds, that wasn't an angle, that was a gimmick. Right. So I'd probably, if you break it down that way, it's like, yeah, as a storyline and getting himself over and cementing him as like a top guy, like the Bloodline's maybe bigger for Roman, but the Shield as a gimmick is bigger than the Bloodline, as if you want to consider them a gimmick, like the group, the Bloodline, like I would rate the Shield. Many people would rate the Shield higher than like Roman, the Usos, and like Solo Sakai. It's like, no, like, yeah. So I'm sorry, Shad. What was your thought?
The other thing I was going to add to Roman's list, even if I didn't like it and didn't think it was the right call, is Roman's also the guy that retired Taker. So
has he wrestled? He wrestled since then.
No, he's not. He almost retired Taker. And then he had the Boneyard thing with AJ. Yeah, I'm blank, but I mean, he was a guy in the spot.
Yeah.
To retire Taker as well. So when you consider how big you have to be to a company to do something like that, and then running in either a gimmick or an angle that was on the top for 3 years, like a 3-year continuous gimmick where you're at the top of the pecking order. Like, I don't know what we could point to in Punk's CV that would match up to that in
And
the slide.
I think Roman does have like the record for most Manias main evented at this point.
Yeah. So
I think he is. I think he.
Because Hogan has.
He's either. He's assuming he will be in the main event of Mania this year, which is probably a good bet. Because if it's not him, I could see it being like Cody versus Rock.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I consider the main event of night one to be the main event of Mania. Like the final match of Mania is if they have 100 nights of Mania, the final match of Mania is the main event. I think I had to add it up, but I think he's either this Mania, if he main events it, he would either be tied with Hogan or become the number one.
Okay.
I think he's tied. He would be tied.
He's gonna get another
because I think they both have like 7, but Roman's like I don't even think he's 40 yet, so it's like
he's gonna get another one.
He's gonna beat Hogan,
even if he doesn't like main event this year.
He'll get like another handful probably.
Yeah, he's gonna get another.
Because even if he kind of gets like the Taker schedule where it's like I'm just gonna come back for like a big Mania match, like they'll have him come back and main event once or twice doing that.
And there'll be some big nostalgia one where he's, Roman's coming back like as the old guard to take on the new hot whoever they're going with next. Like, so that'll probably main event. So like, yeah, like he'll get at least another main event in there.
Yeah.
Now Punk. So what we talked about with the big things for Punk. Summer of Punk in WWE, which that was like 2010-ish, maybe 2011.
Something like that.
So that was largely there was a lot of a booking botch there, but that also wasn't commercially successful. There was the Summer of Punk and Ring of Honor, which did pretty well. And then there is his series with Joe, and also which I think is actually more important than his series with Joe, is the dog collar match with Raven, which I think largely put ROH on the map. And that one's kind of sadly been forgotten to history a little bit, just because I think, recency bias and stuff and everything. But I would say like that's an important match. It's an important indie match that did a lot for Ring of Honor. And I mean the Joe stuff too. And I will defend him in WWE in that was an era where if you weren't like one or two guys that didn't give a crap with you, and even like when they had put the belt on him, they wouldn't give him chances to like be the guy.
But does that get you special consideration for a Hall of Fame career?
No, it gets you. I think it becomes a talking point, though. Like I think you do have to acknowledge. I think you do have to acknowledge it to a degree. Like talking about like, well, yeah, the Summer Punk was kind of a commercial failure, but I think you do need to say, but it was because they screwed up the booking around it too, to a large degree. But
yeah, they really did.
I do think, though, an interesting thing with Punk is he does have, like, some pop culture penetration. Like, there was, like, the Comic-Con appearance, some stuff like that. But I would say, honestly, I think Roman's been given more opportunities, but I also think, like as much as I don't like Roman, if your 1-2 punch of your career is the Shield and the Bloodline stuff, like, you probably deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Being in two of the biggest angles in the company does give you a pretty strong stance on that front.
Yeah.
And then being on top of the company for, God, what? 10 years, 12 years, something like that?
Something like that, yeah. Well, we talked about the one for a long time. Okay, so we have our second topic. So Shad is going to explain this one for us.
So the this particular topic is this was a fun little talking point I stumbled across. No, I didn't stumble across. Somebody brought it to me. And the idea was, what is the best tag team that never was? Someone brought it to me starting with the question of, did The Undertaker and IRS ever team as Death and Taxes? And I went, I don't think so. and the response to that was, okay, that was a huge miss. That was a miss in a time when it's like it would have fit. And so the idea of tag teams that would have probably been very successful but never did happen.
So they have to be contemporaneous, right?
Well, so I have a list of a few that would be contemporaries with each other, and then I have one theoretical.
Like, I couldn't say, like, oh, like, Ric Flair and, like, Lou Thez would have been the bomb. Like, that's not the point.
Right,
the point
right.
is,
well,
like, they would have had to actually been, like...
They could have been a team. So, for example, if it was theoretical, for me to say Mick Foley and Bray Wyatt as a team would have had, like, a lot there, but that wasn't ever physically possible. Okay, so we're talking about... that could have been physically possible to have happen.
Okay. So that makes sense. Gotcha. I just wanted to check.
So, here, I'm going to start off with an old one that is one of those. It's like, that's that makes a lot of sense. But the idea of having George the Animal Steel and Missing Link as a team,
that would have been funny.
Feels like that could have, maybe you got two guys who are doing the same gimmick, yes, but so, I mean, you could have having a kind of Abdul the Butcher style tag team that went around and just mowed through people as an attraction to be scary. I think could have had a lot of ground.
I only see one flaw with that team is like there's just not enough green paint to keep them going.
Okay, that's a fair point. Since this was my idea, I had a few more on hand. I don't think that we ever saw Chris Jericho and Eddie Guerrero as a team.
They did some one-offs, I think. Not like that doesn't count. Like they probably did some house show one-offs, but
I mean, consider though what kind of show would that have been to have Jericho and Guerrero at whatever points in their career they could have teamed up? Like, what kind of cool team that would have been, right?
Wonder. It's you just made me remember. I loved when Eddie and Jeff Jarrett were teaming up, and Jeff Jarrett would put them in the figure four, and Eddie would frog splash them.
Yeah.
I was also wondering if they teamed up in Japan at all. Like they never would have been a regular team. Like it would have been like, oh, they teamed in some tournament or some house show run on the.
Okay.
I got them. I bet they didn't because I think when Jericho was doing his big heel run, I think is when Eddie had the car wreck. It was kind of
it was right around in there. You're right. That's right around in there. So it was unfortunate circumstances that would have kept them apart. Okay. Here's one that I put a question mark next to because I didn't know if it would qualify, but Rick Rude and Kurt Hennig, did they ever team together?
Maybe.
Okay. Is this just one of those esoteric things that I was not aware of?
Well, I would have to really look into it, but I mean they were both in that like Minnesota hard ass society with like the Road Warriors and like Barry Darsow and all those guys. I know they probably would have if Rude hadn't died when he was making his comeback.
Right.
Oh no, I bet they had to have probably teamed in WWE in '90 because Heenan was managing both of them. And I think they teamed up against Hogan and Warrior at some point.
Okay, so quick Googling did not turn anything up for me on that one. All right, here's one that I'm fair certain did not happen. Because we had Generation 1 of the Masters of the Powerbomb. We could have had Sid and Mike Awesome as Generation 2 of the Masters of the Powerbomb.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it would have been interesting.
The Masters of the Powerbomb thing was so dumb. But I remember, like, when I was a kid, I was like, yeah. I was like, that literally got me. Like, oh, they both do the same finishing move.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, like...
Another one, and I know that they were kind of kicking around at the same time, and I thought that it would have been a good. Ted DiBiase used the term salt and pepper team, but as a couple of big ass kicker things is to team Scott Norton and Ron Simmons together.
That would have been interesting.
So they would have been similar big burly dudes, but Simmons being the Simmons being the unstoppable force and Norton being the immovable object as a team together. I don't know. To me, that felt like it had some legs. And then this one, it didn't happen. I know they feuded with each other, but Shamrock and Blackman never teamed up. And it just feels like that was like there were a few times when Severn and Shamrock were on the same team, but Shamrock and Blackman never teamed up. Yeah, really? I remember watching Severn and Shamrock as a team, but how do you miss on that one?
That's well, I'd say I would have recalled if they were like a consistent tag team that like held tag titles or whatever like that. But that's almost like a Mandela effect. Like if you saying like they never tagged, I would have been like, no, like they had to have tagged like at least once or twice, and you're like, no, it never did.
Okay,
you're right. You left money on the table. Like you could have had the gimmick. You could have had them have a run. It's like we're two badass like MMA dudes, and we're just gonna run roughshod over everyone.
Yeah,
and it would have been like, yeah, of course, like
it made perfect sense. It would have been a filler for like 6 months in the tag division. Now, I will fully admit that my memory is not what it used to be. So if I'm wrong about any of these, I apologize now. But I don't think I'm wrong about that last one.
There's a recent one that I thought was awesome, and I even posted this on Twitter, and one of them liked this. Well, now like Brian Cage seems like he is forming a tag team or has formed a tag team with Lance Archer.
Yeah,
it's like, again, like there's criticisms to be made at a longer point about Tony Khan's booking, and it's like, well, maybe one of the things you should do is take that tag team and actually do something with them instead of like you see them have a tag match once a month or so.
Yeah,
but there was a brief, like I think it was like maybe one match, but it was Big Bill and Brian Cage tag teaming, and I sent a tweet saying like these two are awesome because the match wound up being like they were awesome in it. I think they beat up jobbers. It was just, I don't remember what the match was, honestly, but they were awesome in it, and it's like, yeah, this is what actually wrestling needs. It's like two big hosses just beating the shit out of guys and throwing them around and looking awesome. And I tweeted like they should be like basically a Road Warriors tag team where they just go in there and demolish people. And they would get massive doing that. And they would, because that's a trope in wrestling, but that is one of like, how do you get a guy over? Even a guy like who wasn't good and dumb as a box of rocks like Ryback, you get a guy over just having him always win. And people are like, oh, he always wins, I guess he's awesome.
Yeah,
and it works. So yeah, well, Lance Archer and Brian Cage is a good team to if they do push them. But it's like, yeah, just put two big dudes together and have them just demolish the hell out of everyone, and they're gonna get massive. Like, I don't know.
Oddly enough, people like winners, so have this team of dudes win, and people will like it. That was the list I'd come up with. This wasn't even that long ago today that I had this thought, so I don't have a new one to. I don't have any others to add to the pile, unfortunately. I wish I did, but it does kind of run us to a dead end on this topic.
I thought Benoit and Eddie was one that came to mind. Like, I know they've teamed off and on, but like a more consistent like Eddie Benoit team.
Well, I mean, when you have two people who are that close, they're gonna work well together, and you just have to let them do it. But I don't think that one happened either.
Yeah. So it is Fast becoming one of the favorite things I think we've done as a show for me. But so this is the USWA 1992 watch through, which just so we're doing the February 15th, 1992 episode and the February 22nd, 1992 episode. So we have more just delightful Memphis action for you this week. So we're going to start off the 215 episode, and we start off with highlights of Austin Idol, Jarrett and Lawler versus the Moondogs and the Big Black Dog. Shad had a lot to say about this because the Big Black Dog is obviously not very experienced as a worker.
Yeah, he's bad. The thing that frustrated me the most.
He's the big bad black dog.
You know what? I'm just gonna call him BBMD, because calling him Big Black, I know that's the gimmick name and everything, but that still feels kind of to me. But if it's the Big Black Moondog, I'm just gonna call him BBMD because that. I don't know. I feel
still
better
like
doing
Big
that.
Bad Dog better than I liked Big Black Dog.
Well, in watching this, the thing that bugs me the most is the fact that BBMD just doesn't sell for shit. Someone starts working on him, and he'll be like, "Oh," and then he'll just come right back at you. He doesn't. There was a sequence where Jarrett was going at him with a chair, hit him in the gut, hit him 3 times around the back and that sort of stuff, and the guy didn't go down. So Jarrett just quit working with him and hopped out of the ring to go work with somebody else because he's just like, screw it, I'm not doing this. Like, he doesn't say anything because he's too much of a professional, but he's like, no, I'm not doing this.
In my notes I have BBD and I have BBMD, but BBD. But he's not good, and he's not even good at doing like basic shit. Like I saw him do like just body slams.
He dropped people on their hips.
Jarrett or Lawler.
Yeah.
He dropped people wrong, and it's like I recall like earlier this year we saw Kurt Angle doing the segment when he hadn't even debuted in like WWE yet, but he was doing segments with like a local like sports anchor, and was like, well, let me show you how to do like a body slam. And he obviously Kurt Angle was like skilled, but I mean, he like the news anchor was like picking Kurt Angle, and he got like the motion, and obviously Kurt Angle is like, assisting him with whatever, but it's like he got that like down. It's like this dude who's probably like at least like 6'5" or something, big, 300-pound dude, big, like it's like, yeah, you should be like just picking dudes up, slamming them, whatever. And it's like you can't even body slam a dude.
He doesn't rotate him properly.
No,
he just hooks him, brings him up here, and then just kind of like, don't fall on your head. Woo.
He's kind of a stiff.
Yeah,
he can't like bend properly to it. Now, I'm gonna give him one compliment. There'll be a compliment later, but there is a compliment during this. I like the clothesline he hit. I thought that looked cool, like his kind of diving clothesline. Okay, now back to trashing him.
He doesn't bump for anybody. He doesn't.
I don't think he can bump.
He doesn't sell for anybody.
Well, so the problem I thought I saw there was there are obvious spots in the match that he's supposed to no sell. Like there are some obvious spots he's supposed to no sell. But then the problem is there's spots where it's obvious he's supposed to sell and he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. Because he doesn't know how. He can't do it. And that's the thing is I don't like, as a concept, I don't like anybody being brought in as a no-selling stiff. I don't like that for anybody. It is...
Look,
it sets up some really bad habits.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of wrestling between the three of us, so we take someone like the Road Warriors, who like they're big dudes, but they're different from even like here's a Sid Vicious type who is, even bigger than they are, or Kane, or anyone like the Giant,
Yeah.
or even like stiffs who were never good. But it's like the Great Khali. It's like, yeah, a dude like the Great
No,
Khali.
come on, Kali. I'll give Kali credit. Kali is very physically limited, but that guy will do crazy stuff to make a match work.
Okay,
Like to his own
I'm throwing it,
detriment.
guys.
Like he let
I'm
Cena put him
throwing out
through a
that there's,
table.
like,
I think he took. Did he do? He took the big spin from Cesaro. I think he let Cesaro do the neutralizer to him too.
Well, Cesaro is strong enough to do it.
Yeah. Point is, like, there are guys who are big and that they are pushed as monsters. So to a certain level, there is like a no sell for that. Like if you have like, especially you have like a smaller guy, and Jarrett's not small, but let's say you have a guy who's like 6'6", 6'7", 300 pounds. Like he's gonna be bigger than Jarrett, and Jarrett's not a small man. And like if I had to guess, he's probably one of those guys who's like deceptively big. He's probably like 6'2" and 200 plus pounds. But against a bigger dude, he's gonna look smaller. It's like, yeah, I get it. It's like, if he's like throwing a punch, maybe he's punching you like in your chest or whatever, or even like your chin or something like that. You're like, weird example. He was terrible. But Zeus is probably worse than Big Black Dog.
Yeah.
Zeus was terrible, but the gimmick was like, I gotta no sell everything.
Yeah.
I get it. We get it. But even in that context, Big Black Dog was bad. He was not good. And it wasn't just like, I guess I'm trying to delineate where it's like, okay, yes, you're trying to be presented as a monster, and we get that the trope is like sometimes you're booked as a monster, no sell. It's like, you're gonna punch me, I'm gonna act in the face, I'm gonna act like, I'm not even feeling that. That's how little it means to me. I'm a monster. Yeah. Versus like, let me hit you in the head with the trash can, and you're no selling it, and you're obviously not no selling it because you're like, oh, I'm a monster, I don't even feel that. You're doing because it's like, oh, what do I do? Like, you're lost.
Yeah.
And we've watched a lot of wrestling, but I don't think it's like we can see the subtleties. Like we can see having watched a lot of it, we can see the subtleties in a match like Bret Hart versus Davey Boy Smith, SummerSlam '92, where we can be like, oh yeah, look at that move right there. Like he was clearly like Bret was doing all the work there because Davey's gassed. Like we can see that subtlety. But I don't feel this was subtle where it's like, oh, you're like lost. This guy doesn't know what to do in this moment. So he's just like, it's almost like deer in the headlights. He's not good.
No.
It's not good.
I think it even exposes him worse being teamed with the Moondogs, because like my takeaway from these 8 episodes we watch now is like the Moondogs are actually legitimately good workers.
Oh yeah, they are good workers. They have the brawling like really down, and I've loved seeing this. And I've actually I've mentioned before, I've heard about '92 USWA, and specifically like the USWA feud in '92 between the Moondogs and Jarrett and Lawler, because it's really good. And now we're seeing it to the extent that we can see it. Like we obviously were getting clips of these like arena matches.
Yeah.
We're not seeing like the full matches, which I again lament, because the matches, the clips that we see of all the stuff, like, is really good. And it's like, damn, I actually want to see the full match of this stuff. And I don't know if that footage ever even exists, but we're seeing good stuff. And I was always tickled by this, because when I read this or heard about this, it's like the Moondogs, they were just like jobbers in the WWF in like the mid '80s. And it's like, yeah, no. Like you realize that some of the people that historically had been jobbers or whatever, it's like, or journeymen or whatever, it's like, yeah, there's some of actually like the best workers out there. They just, for whatever reason, they're either in the tail end of their career, or they just never, at least in the big leagues or the main, they didn't have the luck of someone like Hulk Hogan. That's a bad example. He's a generational talent, but
yeah.
Like they didn't become like a Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who was a big worker and a big star in his time, but they were more were jobbers. But then here at a small promotion south, they obviously were like they're all over this episode, the next episode. They're all over, and they have been.
They were. I would argue they
they're
were
big.
on the second episode a little too much. I was getting a little.
I would agree. It's like, oh, now the Moondogs are out again. It's like, guys, we already saw them like 20 minutes out of like a 25 minutes out of like a 55-minute show. But
I did have a big sad moment with this first episode though. So they're doing, their rundown of all the shows they're doing this week, and I think it was the Friday show. They were going to be at a dog track, and the post-main event. They were going to have the Moondogs race greyhounds, and there's no footage of it, and I was so sad because I wanted to see the Moondogs. Because I was like, God damn it, like, I want to see the Moondogs race greyhounds.
Mm-hmm. Maybe the Moondogs are actually deceptively fast. Like,
I don't know, greyhounds are pretty... I think greyhounds can break, like, 40.
They're really fast, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I have a friend who, good friend, who used to have a greyhound as a pet, and he moved to Germany and for work because he's in the military, and he had to like they rehomed the greyhound. The greyhound went to a family with kids, so she was well taken care of. But the thing about greyhounds that people don't get is that for like 90% of their time, they're like the laziest goddamn dogs.
Oh, they're called they're notorious for that. Their loving nickname is the 45-mile-per-hour couch potato.
Yeah, they just lay around. They're like sedentary. But then another 10%, it's like the old Looney Tunes cartoons where it's like you just see like a dust cloud where they were, and it's like in the shape of the dog, and then it dissipates, and it's like, whoa, they're like, wait, they're long gone. Yeah.
They also don't have it's not the sense of smell. Like if they get lost from your house, they can't find their way back. Like they don't have that ability versus some other dogs.
For the clips we saw of this 6-man, Brad, I didn't note. I did write something down in my notes because at one point one of the Moondogs had Spike, but they go to use a table. It doesn't really work out for him, but I wrote in my notes, it's like, oh, he must have thought that table belonged to Dave Brown, so he was going to try to destroy it.
There's something they do that's hilarious in the second episode that I'll get to, but like they made me laugh.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Where they just picked everything up and exited like proper gentlemen after they were done like trashing everything. Like I laughed so hard at that, but yeah. So then we have so we're going to start off. They obviously murder jobbers, and Richard Lee does his usual promos. I finally asked the proper people. One of them is Peter F. He posts on PWO. The other is Travis Heckle that does the art for Jim Cornette. I'm in a Discord with him. So I said, who is Richard Lee? Do you guys know? And they said that he is a local country musician that was doing this for publicity.
That's crazy. Because the thing that I've got just from like the 2 months of shows that we've seen, like he was good. Like he actually had talent. Like if he had decided to stick with the wrestling business and had been hired by like WCW or like the WWE, like he would have had at least like a brief but memorable run because he could talk and he could get like his guys over. So
he even pulled a Flairism this week.
Yeah,
because he went. You're gonna ride Moondog Mountain, by God! Like he did it with the Ric Flair like delivery. I'm like, oh my gosh, you just snuck that in there, didn't you?
You just got an homage in there.
Yeah. And I also liked he had long-term storytelling. He had like a little bit of a scar that he had done some makeup on for like the fireball from Lawler.
He had I think he had a brace on his arm too. He was like, "You broke my arm."
Yeah, he was kind of running down all the injuries, and he was a little passionate this week. And then they murder jobbers. destroy everything, and then Austin Idol, like they did like a backstage segment with Austin Idol cutting a promo. I actually really like this one where he's kind of like, I don't care like who you put in front of me, I'm just gonna tear him apart. Like, this is where I think like if you haven't seen a lot of Austin Idol, like I had wondered maybe Shad's opinion on this because Shad had heard some of his promos like I don't necessarily get it, and I was like, oh, I wonder if Shad might see a little bit more of like.
Yeah, this promo he did like is the promo he did here where he's really fired up. What he does is he makes it very, very easy for you to suspend your disbelief. You know, the joke that people make about Eddie Kingston is Eddie Kingston doesn't know professional wrestling's a work. Like that, it was that kind of promo that Austin Idol cut here, and I'm like, okay, all right, I'm here for this.
He did seem he was legitimately upset, but I also thought the promo was weird because it's like he's telling a story about how he doesn't care about he's gonna run over dogs. Obviously he's referring to the Moondogs. He's running over dogs, and he's also referring to like the big black dog BBD. And he's like, he basically saying like, I'm gonna run over dogs. I don't care if they're black or white. And I'm like, this is weird. This is like, weird promo. This is just odd. It's odd to me, but I wasn't thrilled with the promo. It's like,
I like the passion for it.
Yeah.
So we get Richard Lee again, and Big Black Dog beats Chris Frazier. It's real quick.
It's real quick.
Yeah. Then Lawler comes out and he mentions the Greyhounds racing. And I think he talks about they're having a 6-man, kind of goes over the feud, like what you'd expect Lawler to talk about. What were you going to say, Matt?
The one Lawler promo where he tells a story about like when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And I just wrote in my notes, like Jerry Lawler shares a story of casual animal cruelty.
I had the exact same thought.
It's this bizarre story where he talks about how like, when he was a kid, like, he moved to Ohio because his dad like took a job at like an auto plant up there.
Yep.
And that it was cold, and he and his buddies had to like, he had like 2 friends, they had to like walk to school. And there was like this house that they would cut through, but there's a big angry like dog that would chase them from the property. And so one time they caught the dog sleeping, and one of them like put gasoline to the dog's tail on fire, and it like destroyed the tail of the dog. And every time like the dog would like see them, it would like run up to the porch and like cower and let them like walk through the property. And of course the parable of all this that that's what he's gonna like. He's gonna get the big black dog. Like he's gonna like make him fear him, and he knows how to handle. Like he's tired of losing and everything like that. So I get that, but it was also like this. It's much like a few episodes back when it's like Jarrett's like, let me tell you a story about Ernest Rommel, like desert box of the Nazis, and I'm like, whoa, what is this? Like, and it's like. Just analogies, and like maybe this played better in '92.
Well, there is foreshadowing. I'm like, his story does foreshadow.
Yeah, I mean, even though like a lot of people respect the military prowess, I guess, from a technical aspect of Ernest Rommel, but I wouldn't. It's like the drill tweet. It's like you don't have to like. Walking back a previous statement, like you don't have to hand it to the Nazi Ernest Rommel. You don't have to hand it to like, like let me tell you a funny story about how me and my friends committed animal cruelty. And it's like, no, I don't want to hear that. I understand.
Not, please.
Yeah, I get that you're like, I'm gonna beat you, big black dog, but it like maybe do it a different analogy. But
Right.
So then we get recap of like. The Dirty White Boy Emery feud, like their matches and stuff. Dirty White Boy cuts a promo, and we're getting them in a match that you could never pay me enough money to do because they're having a scaffold match.
Nope.
And then they do like a music video of like scaffold matches in Memphis. The one I did like of that was and I don't think a scaffold would actually be that tall, but it was like Bill Dundee, obviously, in his front yard on a scaffold, dropping a watermelon on the ground, which I thought was funny.
Oh, But and of course he drops it on like the cement walkway, not the grass, and it just explodes like it's for people are old enough to remember the Gallagher the comic.
Yeah.
But it's just like explodes a watermelon exploding everywhere.
Yeah.
They know so it's Bill Dundee, but it's clearly Bill Dundee. Bill Dundee, who it is, but yeah.
Yeah, and I asked Chad.
This is a more low rent scaffold than the one you saw like in that NWA used like the late 80s. But still, like I wouldn't want to even do that.
No.
Like, no.
I would not do a scaffold match.
Nope. Not happening. Not doing it. Doesn't matter. Don't care what you say. Not happening.
Then we get what is probably my favorite feud of all this. So we get more Koko Ware, Kamala stuff. There are shenanigans in their match, so he did not win the title, gave it back. But very important thing, Frankie makes his debut on this watch through.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, the clips, I wrote this down in my notes, but the clips of this match actually made it seem like it was a decent match. And that's one of the things that, again, I'm like, I have an appreciation. We obviously did like a tribute show for him. I have an appreciation from this show of Kamala, but Kamala wasn't a great worker. Like
he wasn't.
He wasn't bad.
I will dispute because we talked about this before, but I would dispute. He doesn't have great matches, but I think Kamala is a good to great worker because his character's well thought out. He doesn't break character. He's believable. He doesn't hurt people. He knows how to work with people and like make them look good. So I think he's a good worker. He just doesn't have good matches because he really doesn't need to.
Yes, and the appreciation. Again, think of it this way. Like, let's say that you have like a world-class chef. They're like, 3 Michelin stars and they can make just about anything. And they're so talented. It's like, let me do this avant-garde dish, whatever. And then you go down the street at the end of the block, it's a restaurant and all they serve is mac and cheese. And it's not like there's 20 different ways to do mac and cheese. It's like mac and cheese, one version of mac and cheese. And you go in there and it's like, hey, can you put like, and it's like, no, I do mac and cheese. Maybe I'll sprinkle a little like bacon on top or some breadcrumbs, but it's this mac and cheese. And there's a line out the fucking door. And you go in there and you eat the mac and cheese and like, God damn. Like, I don't know that I would hire you to make me like a souffle, but this is the best damn mac and cheese. Like, and it's like, that's kind of Kamala. Like he was limited maybe. And he would do kind of like the same type of matches because it's like you're a big dude, you're going to play to that. But it's like you did a really great job doing exactly what you were supposed to do. And you did it well and you made a lot of money in your time doing exactly that. And people still remember you. And I have a deeper appreciation because, again, watching a lot of wrestling as we have, you kind of get to see some of that where it's like, if you watch his stuff, it's like you don't necessarily get it, but then hearing the stories that it's like, oh yeah, he was easy to work with, like never hurt anybody, and
didn't have an ego.
where it's like, oh, didn't have an ego, but you see the subtleties where it's like, oh wait, he did that thing in that match, and it's like, oh, that actually makes sense because it's like he was either selling or he was working it, where it's like, oh, of course I'm a big like savage monster heel, like of course I would do this action, or like some of the stuff we saw where it's even actually to his credit, it's even a little more actually thought out where it's like, oh, I'm going up against like Andre the Giant. It's like, oh, or going against like, one of the Von Erichs with the Iron Claw. It's like, oh, let me actually be a little cagey where it's like, I'm going to avoid that, like, and it's like, oh, that's actually, you're a thinking like monster heel.
He's
like,
cunning.
You appreciate it.
He has a
there's cunning. Yeah. But I'm digressing that this match actually looked pretty good. It made me want to see it. And again, I go back to that. It's like I want to see some of these arena matches because this actually made me see the Kamala versus. If you had said like, "Hey, you want to watch a Koko Ware versus Kamala match?" I'd be like, "I don't think that's going to be good."
Yeah.
But seeing the clips, I'm like, "Damn, that actually, I would watch that. That's at least interesting."
Yeah.
There's a good one with him and Lawler from TV from like late '91, I think, where he wins the title. Um, but I mean, and Coco's been pretty motivated for these. Like, I actually think Coco's kind of had a fire under his butt for this.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
think
I mean,
he's
he's in
relishing getting
he's
like
in the title program. He's putting his putting his back into it. You know.
yeah. So then we get the main event of the week. So this is um, Jeff Jarrett, Jerry Lawler, and Koko B. Ware taking on Eric Emery, Tony Falk, and Invader. Now Invader's just a masked jobber, but they finally referred to Tony Falk that explains his dress because he is Eric Emery's driver, according to Dave Brown in this episode.
Yeah.
Eric Emery's driver, and I've always wondered, as like, why is he coming out with like a little hat on and like almost like a tuxedo, but not.
Why is he wearing the kind of clothes that parents used to dress little boys up in to take them for pictures in the mall?
Why do I feel the need to take a VD test every time his fiance is on screen?
Yeah, seedy, just seedy. But yeah, his driver, and it's like that's a weird gimmick, kind of. But I do like the pairing of like Eric Emery and Falk, and again, like Invader was just like a mass jobber, but. I wrote in my notes what I really appreciated because Eric Embry has like he has like, I don't know how you describe it. It's like the tights where it has like two straps, and it's like
singlet,
but ends in briefs.
Yeah, it's a singlet or a butcher. Yeah. Some people call it a singlet or a butcher. I don't know why.
Okay, but the two strap singlet, and I appreciated again. He commits to the bit. Like I appreciated he pulling down the singlet, and so and he's just got like flabby boobs, and he's kind of gross and everything, and it's like you get the bit. Like you're kind of just a sleazeball.
I love. I have to say, like I've seen him a lot before this, but just the week to week, I love Eric Embry. He is so good at being a heel. Like
he's a good worker.
He's a delight.
And his character work is strong because he gets over like I'm just a dirtbag heel and I'm sleazy and you're not gonna like me, and he makes sure you don't like him. He's just an arrogant asshole and grating, and it's like
and he's just like he just leans into being gross too, and he doesn't do it in like an overwhelming way like where like Bastion Booger's doing it too far to one end.
Yeah.
Like he does it like there's subtleties to it, and like I think he gets a little more disheveled every week, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, when we get to it in a second a little bit, but there's an aspect of because he's on the second episode, and then like I appreciated that too. But go ahead.
So then this is a 6-man. I really like this match because it's a good TV 6-man. So it lets everyone get a little bit of shine to them. But I liked it because they weren't trying to kill themselves and having a 5-star match. They were just having a peppy little, hey, let's go out there and have a good time. Let everyone get their stuff in, and we're just gonna take up like 8 minutes of TV for a main event. And I really liked it because it didn't what's the word I want? It didn't demand like I have all this investment in it. It was just a fun, fluffy little romp.
You can just relax and have a good time with it.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually love this match. And is this a 5-star classic? No. It's just like like a 6-minute match, something like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's memorable or good.
Quick.
Like
no, but it's fun because it is exactly that. It's just like here's some stars, and you have Lawler, Koko B. Ware, Jarrett, and then you have guys who are like consistently been kind of pushed because they're on the TV, and Eric Embry and Falk. Invader's just a jobber, but they go out there and it's like it's almost like a showcase where they each have like some moments to shine and look good, and it's quick, it's fun. You leave the crowd effectively happy because the big faces are doing their stuff. The heels are kind of like healing it up and being like a little over the top at times.
And we got to see the Ghostbuster.
Yeah, and they're getting this also over, and it's just fun. And I love when they do like stuff like this. That's why sometimes people hate on some stuff. Usually the people hate on like AEW, and it's like, why is this like just random match happening. It's like not every match has to exactly have like a storyline behind it.
Just
Sometimes you
let
could just have
just have a
yeah.
fun match.
Sometimes you could just have a TV match and it's fun. I'm always behind on AEW's television, but they had a match not long ago where it's like, hey, let's have Hologram versus Beast Mortos versus Commander. And it's like, oh, they're just going to go out there for 8 minutes and do like crazy lucha spots, and it's going to be fun as hell.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's it. Like, there isn't really a lot to it.
Well, you gotta.
It's super fun.
I mean,
and you enjoy it.
That's a really weird complaint about wrestling because, like, I don't. You need filler on shows to kind of like let your brain reset. Like, you don't want like everything doesn't need to be like that's kind of I think to go like to a different genre. Like that's kind of what ruined comic books was this idea that everything had to like fit into everything instead of like, oh hey, Doc Ock showed up this week and Spider-Man's going to defeat him and we will talk about like some of the issue to issue things like, oh, Aunt May's been sick for 3 issues, so we'll touch on that a bit. But like this will never like come up again. Like that like I don't like I feel like a good promotion has like 3 or 4 like strong angles, but you still got to fill the card out with matches and stuff. Like people need stuff to do. Like I mean even in WWE like not all their matches like necessarily have meaning.
There is a principle in in adult education that says that adults, no matter how engaging you are, no matter how good your presentation is, that sort of stuff, come around 45 minutes, they're going to start to tune out on you. And you need to do something to reset. The most typical thing to do is take a break. Or you change up what you're doing in some fashion. You change topics, you change methods you're conveying, some things like that. And so what happens when you've got a show going like this, and like let's say it's an AEW show, and they've got they've got this hot thing that involves Osprey and Fletcher and the Callis family and that sort of stuff in the first hour in the opening segments, and then you go and then you get right about the middle of the show and you're like, why is there, like you said, Matt, Hologram and Commander and Beast Mortos having, because first of all, it changes things up. Second of all, you don't have to be emotionally invested in like staring down the barrel of this match in order to keep up. You can just be fun and you can have yourself a little bit of a reset.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
That's why there's an intermission in Monty Python's Search for the Holy Grail, because they were like focus testing it, and like no matter what they did, like people just would stop laughing at that point in the movie.
Yeah. People would quit laughing then because you can only keep them laughing for so long and you have to give them a break. And so you get this garish intermission screen for 5 minutes or so.
That's why cartoon shorts are like 7 minutes. There's a specified reason why cartoon shorts are exactly the length they are.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this was a good episode. I like this episode a lot. So we're going to go over to the 222 episode now. I'm just going to say it right now. This isn't a bad episode. I just got sick of the Moondogs by the end because they just overdid it.
That's kind of where I am on this particular path, is I'm just like, I know that this has been the big angle and Lawler and Jared are in it and stuff, but it's like, this feels like it's been running long enough that I'm burning out, you know?
Well, they've done pretty good at keeping
this
it interesting
on this episode.
But it's like, why couldn't you do something with Tom Pritchard? Why couldn't you know? So we start off, Eric Embry comes out.
To that point, Brad, we'll get to it, but I'll have a point to that. Like exactly what you're saying. Like, why can't they do something with this individual? It's like, okay, but that's at the end of the show. But go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So Eric Embry comes out, talks about how he beat Dirty White Boy in the scaffold match, hurt his knee. I don't know if he's going to be on future episodes. I'm pretty sure this is writing Dirty White Boy off to go to Smoky Mountain Wrestling. It felt very write-offy to me, because like we'll get into it here. So he has a match with Brian Collins. So as he's wrestling CJ cuts a promo on Dirty White Girl. Dirty White Girl runs out and attacks her, and so
hold on. The reason why that was set up is because like in Eric Embry's promo, which by the way, this goes to like what I was saying, like there's another part where he gets sleazier. And I don't know if he did this at the last show, but I certainly recognize it this one where he has like bleach blonde hair, but he has like the dark beard going on, and I'm like, oh, you just look like such a douche. It's got like the dark hair and the bleach blonde, and you're kind of pudgy.
His hair was douchey too, the way because it was like real greasy on this episode.
Yeah, but Eric Embry cuts this promo where he's trashing like, oh, like I beat up the dirty white boy, and he makes a comment where it's like, oh, I'm gonna call up Dirty White Girl, I'm gonna show her like what real man. Like, he's basically saying like, he's gonna get together with Dirty White Girl, and he says that, and CJ's not a good actress or whatever, but he has the match jobber.
She was a better promo than I thought she'd be. I'm not saying she was good, but I was like, oh, you got your point across, like, and to me, if you can get the point across, it's like, okay, you're okay.
There's a certain level of competency, but you knew something was going to happen because Dave Brown and Corey Macklin were noting, like, see, because she's not a great actress, but CJ had this look during the jobber match where she's like frowning and like furrowed brow, whatever. And Dave Brown's like, oh, CJ doesn't look happy with the comments that Eric Embry made about Dirty White Girl. And so afterwards she cuts a promo about how, she's gonna beat up Dirty White Girl, whatever. But and that she trashes Dirty White Girl, that leads to Dirty White Girl coming out just brawling.
Yeah.
It was CJ. It's not great, but
a Dirty White Girl I thought looked good in her part of it. Like Dirty White Girl, I
actually feel like Dirty White Girl hasn't been bad like the times I've seen her so far.
She's confident. Now what I liked about this though is so she's doing this, and Embry's obviously beating up the jobber, but he keeps trying to leave, and the jobber keeps like interfering because the jobber wants to win the match. So Embry being smart just grabs him and pile drives him to get DQ'd so he can get out and win the match, which is a great, like, we haven't really seen the pile driver come in before now because obviously for the storyline purposes it's illegal in Memphis, even though everyone does a pile driver every time you can't swing a dead cat in Memphis without hitting a wrestler doing a pile driver, even though it's illegal. But so he does that to get DQ'd, which I thought was really it was really clever on his part. So, things break down. So we get a Dirty White Girl promo, which I actually thought her promo was pretty decent.
Yeah.
So Dirty White Boy's hurt, obviously, and she decided to call in a friend, and I popped for this because it is Pat Tanaka. And then we get a Pat Tanaka music video.
Pat Tanaka video.
Yeah. Now,
oh, yeah.
I did check. I did look into this. He is still a WWE contracted worker, but since they're doing the talent exchange, he's kind of just jobbing at this point. So they sent him down because he does have like, if you don't know, he does have a history in Memphis. Like he teamed with Jarrett when Jarrett was really green, in like '86 and '87. But I liked how they did this because obviously he has some name value here, but they made Pat Tanaka seem like a big deal. And then
I have a question.
Yeah.
So they showed some clips of Pat Tanaka, which I think it was like him in Japan.
A lot of it was AWA.
Oh, okay.
Because DDP made numerous appearances in this, managing him and Diamond. I figured Shad popped when he saw 80s sleazeball DDP.
Yeah, a little bit.
I wasn't sure if they had shown some like Japanese stuff that he may have done, but I remember like around this time. Or a little bit, well, I think it was wrapped up by 92, but remember there was a brief, like, kind of affiliation that the WWF at that time, WWF had with the SWS, which
Oh,
was
yeah.
Tenryu's like
Yeah,
promotion.
it was the precursor to War.
Yeah, it was a precursor to War, but they actually had like a couple shows that they had like WWF talent, and it was like
Really interesting
great.
results too.
Yeah, but that one, oh god, there was a show, and who was his opponent? It was like Randy Savage versus. I don't think it was Savage versus Tenryu, was it? I don't. If it was, it was Savage versus some Japanese worker, and Savage just went fucking balls to the wall, and it made me pause because I'm like, Savage never really did it, but I'm like, god damn it, Savage on like a run and like early or like 90s All Japan would have been fantastic. Like I saw a clip actually like earlier in the last like 24 hours. I saw a clip of early 90s, like when he had that period where he had like left the WWF, but like right before he retired. But back when Ted DiBiase like briefly was it back in like All Japan or like in Japan doing work, he had a match with Tenryu, and it's like holy shit! Like this was, I mean, Tenryu is a world class worker. He's one of the best workers of the last like 40, 50 years. Like he's fantastic. But it was a match with Tenryu versus DiBiase, and it's like holy shit, because it was a good match, and then all of a sudden Tenryu kicks DiBiase in the face, and it's like I don't know what this was. I don't know if it was like Tenryu is like working it, or he's like wake up, like start having a good match. But all of a sudden DiBiase's like throwing forearms, and it looks stiff as shit. Maybe Tenryu was like kicked him in the face, and it's like stiffen up American boy,
trying to piss him off.
And it just was on, and I'm like, this is exactly what I want. And like I mean I'm a mark for that stuff. It's like this is what I want. I want just two dudes like wailing on each other. This is King's Road.
You know what else those SWS WWF shows gave us is the infamous John Tenta versus Katawe shoot.
Yes. Katawe, like, again, we talked about this before in the show. Katawe would like don't think that you're not gonna get messed up. John Tenta was a big boy and he could handle himself.
You know what upset me though is he started that and then he pushed out because, and Meltzer said this, he didn't want to engage because he didn't know if he could actually beat Tenta because of Tenta's amateur wrestling.
I loved the first time I watched it. I could see this moment, just this particular moment where it hits him, and I heard the Key and Peele line in my head. It's like, you done messed up, AA Ron. And it's like he realized it in that moment. He's like, uh-oh.
But
because
everything I've ever heard about John Tenta was that he was just a really nice guy. But that's the exact type of guy. Like he you could see he tried really hard to be like work with Katawa. But you could see like eventually the switch got flipped, and it's like that's the type that the guy who's like super nice always, you could see the switch got flipped, and when that happens, that's the exact type of guy. It's like, oh no, I was kidding. Like I gotta go.
Yeah,
like,
I think
they're saying I gotta go.
What's the adage? Fear when the peaceful man goes to war.
Yeah, because that's like, oh, it's not. You done like you done messed up. Like he's not. Now it's real. Like in the nice guy is gonna be not nice.
That's
once
one
you
thing.
pushed him far enough, he's done.
Tenta was ungodly strong. He's a big dude. If like you would think, oh well, of course he's strong, but he was crazy. The famous clip, like Boss Man like jumps off the top rope. Tenta catches him. He doesn't even like. It's not like I'm gonna stagger. It's like
he's just firm standing, and just boom, there he is.
Yeah, it's like if my 5-year-old were to jump on me, and she weighs like 35 pounds, and it's like I'm not super strong, but I pick her up all the time, and it's like 35 pounds isn't that much. If she like did like a flying body press on me, like I'd be like, okay, I got you. It wouldn't bout but this is like a 300 something pound dude.
Yeah,
didn't even move.
The thing is, the thing I've learned from Shad though, when it comes to like wrestling, is like there might be a point where you just have to make a point and kick someone in the face, like just to prove a point.
Shad did it. Shad did it a couple times. Once.
Well, no, okay, I see what you. the time where I had to do it was there was one time I had to do it intentionally, but then the other thing was typically if someone chops you, they know they're going to get chops back, and I never chopped back. I put them in the corner and I kicked them. And my not to sound whatever, but I know how to throw a kick. So it's like if you're gonna throw chops at me, I'm gonna throw one kick for every chop you throw at me, and you're gonna feel it. So yeah, every now and then you got to kind of remind them. It's like, hey, I'm another person who's out here too.
Yeah. So then we get more Kamala versus Koko Beware, which is my favorite feud of this so far. So this match is going to be, they're telegraphing that Koko is probably going to win, but it's the title versus Frankie.
Yeah.
And we get a Dennis Corluzzo promo, which I actually like this promo because he's just being like, he's gotten better about it the last couple promos he's done, but like the Jersey dirtball gimmick that Corluzzo is doing, I like it. He's just talking about how Kamala's gonna eat Frankie, and just he managed to avoid the racial thing and just ran Koko down for being poor, which I thought was a better tact.
Yeah, I guess I was a little like wary because some of his past stuff on these shows have been a little like you're kind of throwing some racial angle into this, but I did find the promo funny because he was basically saying like, yeah, like we don't want your 1962 Pontiac, like we don't want your dilapidated house, like we know you got an old lady, you got 14 kids, and you got dilapidated house, cockroaches the size of dogs, and your kids like have the cockroaches as pets. Like we don't want them. We want that dirty like infested chicken you call Frankie. And then he makes sure to be like, and actually I expect to get a certificate, like an award from the health department for getting rid of that dirty chicken you call Frank. And it's like, yeah, like it was again a little weird. I was a little wary. You made some comments which are a little suspect.
Yeah.
Some of the earlier stuff, but you were running him down. It's like, you're just a poor, dumb idiot. And it's like, you have nothing that we want except we're going to take your bird. So it was kind of funny. Like,
I do understand by all accounts, it is the word.
Oh, you haven't heard? What?
Haven't heard? What have I not heard?
So we get the Koko counter promo. It's what you. So he does the singing thing on this one, which he goes away from it pretty quick. But I kind of like that they left the 1, 2, 3 in when he's getting ready to do his little singing thing. But I always love the old school promos where they're just like in their backyard with like a microphone that obviously has to be hooked up to like large equipment to work properly. But
I don't feel Frankie was feeling the singing promo sometimes because Koko would get like loud or stuff like that, and Frankie would be like, like he'd like make little bird noises at certain points where he's like, whoa, like calm down.
Yeah. And now this is a growing frustration I have with people not wearing their belts, and it'll come up later. But so I think it was this week or it was last week. So Brian Christopher won the Texas heavyweight title in here, which you wouldn't know because no one's ever worn a freaking belt on this whole thing.
That's a problem.
Then we get highlights of Lawler versus the Big Black Dog. Now, I'm going to be complimentary of the dog here because so at one point Lawler fireballs him. And I kind of like his sell job there where he just kind of grabs his face and goes running off.
Yeah,
I did like that sell job on it. And then he just pretty much just beats the living crap out of Richard Lee until the Moondogs come out.
Yeah.
So
if he had run away shouting "yap yap yap yap," then that would have been top tier content. But it was still pretty good.
Then Jeff Jarrett's out for a promo. I think he's the only guy that has music. So they're talking about all this, they're doing their usual dog stuff. He's got his chair, which I liked him talking about the chair. Like, this chair is all nice and pristine and now there's blood on it and, dents and all this stuff. But they've decided.
And he was like, "Oh, it's gonna have even more like before this is all said and done." And it's like that actually was effective. It's like that's a good promo to me. It's like, yeah, look at this. Like I beat the hell out of you with it, and I'm gonna do it some more. Like I thought that was effective. I liked it.
Yeah, so they're changing tactics up yet again, and they're bringing in the junkyard dog to combat this pack of dogs. Now, obviously, junkyard dogs like 4 years beyond washed at this point, but I like that that's what their answer is.
Mm-hmm.
I had a thought about that though. Again, I think it's like it's very clever that it's like, oh, well, to combat a dog, we're gonna bring in a dog. Like, and yes, he was washed, but was at this point, even though he had only been around like a month, if that. But was Austin Idol already gone? Because it's like Austin Idol, like you're bringing in JYD, you're not bringing in, not be like Austin Idol's gonna come get you.
Yeah, because Austin Idol probably makes a good like penny, so like they brought him in to do his program and send him on. Like that's actually for territory wrestling. That's pretty standard issue for like his role. Like I know when I watched 85 JCP, they do this big gimmick match with Kernodle and all this stuff and the Russians, and they bring in Sergeant Slaughter to do one date, and he appears on TV like one time and cuts a promo, and then he's gone. Like, so that's kind of just territory wrestling sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by this point, and I think we had looked it up, so it's true. But Robert Fuller was gone, and I only mention that because I think in the first of these 2 episodes, I think they had promoted him against like what
Flaming Star.
Like
his
Flaming Star.
His match from the 215 one would have been his last match in the company.
Yeah, so they promoted that match, but then it's like he's never mentioned. He outside of promoting that match, like he's not mentioned on the 215 episode or this 222 episode at all. And so he's gone.
And you can tell they're starting to shift. You can tell the rosters. We're probably going to see a lot of the roster shift because Pat Tanaka obviously came in. I saw on the graphics they're bringing in Jim Steele, which I popped for.
Mm-hmm. Jungle Jim Steele.
Yes, or Iron Man Jim Steele. He worked in All Japan a lot, but so they're bringing him in. I think I wouldn't be shocked if Dirty White Boy doesn't show up again. Because like I said, that felt very like they were sending him on with that program. So then we get a Richard Lee promo. So Jarrett comes out versus the Shadow. The Moondogs run in, and no match ends cleanly this week. So the Moondogs come in and attack him, beat down. And now this is my favorite part is, so they do all this stuff. They break all this stuff. And then Richard Lee cuts another promo, and then they pick everything up and leave like proper gentlemen. Which I laughed at. So then they come back out after... Oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, they demolished some jobbers. They did come back. They beat us some jobbers. And then it turns into like a brawl. Well, when they had the Jeff Jarrett Shadow match, they were beating up Jarrett and the Jobber, the Shadow, which I actually I got a kick out of, kind of, because it's like, yeah, they're beating up the Jobber too.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't
I only made it. Yeah, I made a note though because I guess when they're like the Wild Brawl, because Dave Brown and Corey Macklin made a big point of it, where it's like, yeah, there was this bell here that it's like an old bell that's been around forever, like it's like a fire department bell, and they broke the supports for it. Like we can't really use that bell that well anymore. And then like they kept going on about the bell, and I'm like, what's the deal with the bell? But they were like, it's Dave Brown apparently is affected by his tables.
Yeah, I do have to admit though, I do like the bell sound that Memphis uses. It's got more personality.
Man, I don't know what it is, but a wrestling bell sounds entirely different than a boxing bell does. And I know when I was working, you don't hit, like the bell's sitting there flat, you don't hit it on the top, you hit it on the side so it rings nice. Because if you hit it on the top, it goes tink, 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 and it, but I don't know if it's what it is.
It was
That
a big old bell though, because you did see it when they pulled it out.
mm-hmm.
So then after they kill the jobbers, Eddie Marlin comes out. He's like, "Get him out of here!" And then he summons them away. They didn't attack the table again, obviously. Now, I have a theory of what happened here and why they are so out of control this week. Is they're being poor sports because they lost to the Greyhounds, and everyone must pay.
Everyone must pay.
But like I said, the first time they come out after the Jarrett thing, them just packing everything up and going to the back like proper gentlemen, leaving no debris. Just I laughed so hard. I even like rewound it and watched it again because it was so funny. And then so Lawler comes out and does a promo. I should have written down what he said. I totally blanked. Oh no, he's doing a backyard. He's in his like front yard doing a promo. I actually like this one. Because I was thinking about how, this is kind of like a classic Lawler one because he's telling some jokes and stuff. And he's not like too out there or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so we get the main event. So we get Brian Christopher, who we have not seen since the second episode we've done of this on TV.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if he just got cut off since I think we have the Louisville feed. But so this is him versus Ricky Hayes. I actually thought before the Moondogs run in and he bails and poor Ricky Hayes just gets beaten senseless. I actually thought this was a really fun match because Brian Christopher's kind of like not taking him seriously, and Hayes is kind of getting some hope spots. But like it was a nice fun little sprint of a match.
It was a fine match. Not very long, but it was fine. And then we see Christopher hit his finish, and it's like I do like that they're establishing. They're going through and establishing his move and that sort of thing. Brian Christopher's just such a natural heel that he's like the inverse Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah.
The dude, he damn near couldn't be a face, almost.
He just comes off as like an insufferable douche. So
yeah.
It's like, yeah.
His facial expressions are really good.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing he does, and he did this for like a long time, where it's like he'd like do a move on the face, he'd be like he'd like do this like little shit heel like laugh, like, oh, I'm so great. And it's like I understand it's annoying, but it's like don't do that after every move. Like, and I felt he overused it a little bit, but at this point he was still pretty young in his career, so it's like, okay, well.
Yeah, he's only a couple years in.
And I think he was kind of new to being like a heel, so it's like, okay, you're gonna probably overcompensate a little bit, but
you kind of.
I felt at times it got like you're doing a little too much. Like dial it back a little bit, but
I think you have a crutch when you're kind of doing something new or you're kind of inexperienced, because I think what he's doing is kind of like the thing I talk about, where like the young wrestlers think like mean mugging is a personality. And you kind of like have to. I'm sorry, Shad. I don't mean to accost you like that, but like I think it's kind of like that, where it's like he's putting it together, but he needs like he's just kind of like getting his legs under him a bit.
Well, and in the case where, for example, let's say you got a young guy teamed up with a vet, and the vet's talking during an interview, what's a young guy supposed to do? So, he just stands there and mean mugs. It's like, well, I mean, okay.
So there's a funny Memphis one right after the Tupelo concession stand brawl, and Honky Tonk Man's cutting a promo, and it's topical because Larry Latham, whose spot was in the promo, so they're at the announce desk, kind of behind Larry Latham, and Honky Tonk Man's talking all this crap, and while he's doing it, Larry Latham's just flexing for the camera and making kissy faces at it while he's doing all that stuff, and it's so hilarious.
I don't know if he's gonna drop me on my head. I don't know if he's gonna break my neck. It's so hard for me to take Honky Tonk serious.
What was that? I need to find it. Like that clip where it was some convention where like you could like get in a booth with Scott Steiner and like cut a promo with him or something. And that loser says something about STDs and Scott's like, "Whoa, you got STDs?" Like just during
Oh my god.
I heard it so long ago. I bet it's out there.
Oh my god.
So I just heard a random "It's still real to me, damn it" in public recently, and I laughed so hard.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because I wonder.
It's still real to me, damn.
Because I need to ask.
I think I follow that guy on Twitter. Like that guy's on.
Oh, is he
like,
still alive? That was my question.
Oh,
if he
yeah.
was still alive.
Yeah, the whole thing, the whole quote is great. It's like, I don't want to see another one of these. And it's like, the best is like Terry Funk has to tell him to calm down. It's like, thank you for saying what needed to be said. It's still real to me, damn it. And Terry Funk's like, take it easy, man.
Does he?
Like,
does,
okay.
Does he? He's not trying to milk that. Like, remember?
No, the real guy is actually like a super nice guy. He's just a fan. He's a fan of like
He's just
wrestling.
passionate.
Remember, like,
he's like good natured about the fact that he became a meme essentially.
Yeah,
like, but he's actually a nice guy. Like,
I just want to like
polite, interacts with people well. Like,
remember the guy like when Taker lost to Lesnar at Mania, the guy they caught like reacting.
Oh, like yes,
yeah, like I was wondering. So it sounds like he was good natured, but that guy was so annoying because he tried to like cash in on that and like make it a thing, and it's like, no, stop. Like, it doesn't work like that.
So I think his name is Ellis, maybe. Like I've met him. I've met him in real life, and it was actually because I think he was on the East Coast for a while, and there is a local, and there's an annual comic book convention in DC. And they've tried to make it a big thing, and it kind of is a big thing in the sense that they do get like name guests, like, and relatively big name guests, not like here's Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, but it could be like here's David Tennant as Doctor Who, like maybe he would be on the convention. Like they will have like some name guys. So he was there at one of these like a few years back, like many years back. I went like before I even had kids, and I think I went for like Sting. I went to get like Sting's autograph because I've gotten Sting's autograph multiple times, but I think that was like the first time I got it. And he was there. He was in line, and I'm like, I know you. I was like, I know you from somewhere. And he, to his credit, he wasn't like, of course you do. He was kind of like, yeah, you probably do. And I'm like, where do I know you? Like, why are you so familiar to me? And it's like, I like went to, because we're both in line for like Sting, so it's like
you were there
obviously
a while.
You're a wrestling fan. Yeah, well, but also it's like you're a wrestling fan. Like you're not just a random guy walking off the street, like waiting in line for like a wrestler to his autograph. So he's like, yeah, I was kind of famous for like a thing I did at and I'm like, what? And he's like, okay. And he's like, and he wasn't like, oh, let me show. He was a little bit sheepish. He's like, yeah, this. And I'm like, oh my God, you're like Undertaker guy. And he's like, yeah, he was more chill about it. He wasn't like, no, that's not who, I don't know what you're talking about. But he wasn't like arrogant. It's like, of course, you know who I am. He was a nice guy. Like it was actually a entertaining, like almost bonding moment. I'm like, yeah, you're that guy. He's like, yeah, it's me. Like, and he was cool about it. So
good.
In defense of that guy.
No, I mean,
and I don't think, in at least in recent times, he's not like an arrogant guy about it. Because I think
it's not even.
I've seen him on Twitter.
It's not even
social media.
It's not even an arrogant thing. Sometimes though, with those meme people, is they try to. Like I think like Boogie tried to do the fat guy falling in pool thing like 50 times over the years to try and recapture that first one, and it just never works. Like stuff like that is where a lot of those meme people get in trouble.
Funny story. I think one of the best examples of the meme person handling it well was, and I may have some of the details wrong, but the Hawk Tua girl she turned down, like, because she got an offer to do, like, a pictorial spread and that sort of stuff. She turned it down, took the money she made from off of something related to it, and donated it to a charity and kept her day job. And the biggest thing she did was start a podcast. And it's like, I'm impressed with how down to earth that is, to be honest.
I think there's a certain brand of intelligence to that, especially if your meme is just like, oh yeah, this isn't even going to be 15 minutes. Like, there's nothing worse than someone who's at like 14:59 of their, like, not to get into like the ins and outs of it, but like those people that were kind of like a thing during like Gamergate, and they still like, someone would be like, my experience with Gamergate, and it's like, and then your first reaction is like, wasn't that like 12 years ago? Like, you're still talking about that?
Yeah.
Like stuff like that, where like people are trying to like cash in on something that hasn't mattered in forever. Or oh, there's a good example I can't remember. Oh, the guy the guy in when the Giants beat the undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl, and that guy that did the helmet catch, like literally the only thing he ever did like that mattered in the NFL, and he like tried to write a book or something. And it's like, no one cares.
No, that's that.
Like, you got a football caught in your helmet at a big moment in a game. Like, good for you, but
Yeah,
like,
I don't. What kind of book am I going to read here over a freak occurrence?
yeah,
Not going to happen.
yeah. So that this episode, I was entertained until the last two runs out by the Moondogs, then I was getting annoyed with it. And then when they did it during the Brian Christopher match, I was like, you couldn't have just given me like
that. That did annoy me, because it's like all of a sudden they run out and they're just beating up. One thing I did like, the Brian Christopher did a total heel move where he just took a powder and the
let them
Moondogs were
beat up.
beating up
Yeah.
his opponent Rick Hayes, and Brian Christopher is just like laughing on the outside, and it's like, you know what? Like, I didn't want or need a Moondogs run in, and it was gratuitous, but I did appreciate that with Brian Christopher. He's like, oh,
Nope.
I'm not. This doesn't involve me, but
Yep.
he stuck around, and it's like, ha 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 ha. Like, and that's like a total him getting over as like a dirtbag heel. It's like, that's exactly what that sort of like character would do. It's like, I have no issue with you guys. Like, you guys are bigger, badder heels, so I'm not gonna do it. But he's also like, ha 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 ha. Like, better you than me. I like that part, but
I have to say, I'm looking forward to the next time we do this, because they're having a team debut on next week's show called the Fat Boys, and their names are Meat and Potatoes.
Meat and Potatoes. Ah, great. If this was, again, this 1992, in 2024, if this happened, half of the internet would be like, this is the dumbest shit ever. The other half would be like, push these guys to the tag titles. Like,
Dude, there's a okay. A little while back, I went to a Dynamite taping, and I had no idea they were doing Ring of Honor matches for taping for the show, and I didn't know who the guy was, but I ended up being super impressed by Beef, because he went from entering the arena to crickets, like the whole building being like, who? To all of a sudden everybody is chanting for him by the time the match was over. So I was like, you team Beef with Meat and Potatoes, you got a meal, baby.
Look, you got a soup going on.
Yeah, that's right.
Look, there's criticism from some people that it's like, oh, meme wrestlers. It's like, I can kind of get some of the criticism, but it's also like, not everyone who is a meme wrestler or starts off that way is just like, they're dog shit, so they're just making do with like a funny gimmick or whatever.
But the thing is, like, though, meme wrestlers have their place. That's what I hate when people complain about modern wrestling, is they always complain about stuff that has always had a place on the card for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think the bad like pop culture like wrestlers weren't like the meme wrestlers of their day? Like, Batman with 2 T's in like the WWF in like the 60s, or like the leather.
Cowabunga the Ninja Turtle.
Yeah, or even like Ned the Rat. Like, you don't think those were like the meme wrestlers of their day?
Yeah. There were dumb jokes all the time, and comedy matches were a thing. It just so happened that people would just kind of do comedy matches sometimes as opposed to having a comedy gimmick. So what? And there's always somebody who says the new guy coming along's killing the business. I mean, Luthez said that about Harley Race.
They said about Luthez too. They're complaining they did too many.
Yeah, they said that about Luthez too. So it's like, you know what? You're just in the cycle, and now you're the grumpy old pissant in the cycle. So tie an onion to your belt and piss off.
Well, I think what people don't understand now though is like, you can't really do the old style anymore because MMA's there. Like, you have to be different than MMA, because that's the one thing I hate in modern wrestling is when they try to do worked MMA, it always looks like garbage.
Yeah, because you've seen the real thing and you know the difference.
Yeah.
It isn't Diet Coke that tastes like regular Coke. This is that old diet where you can taste the chemicals.
Yeah. Or New Coke, which I don't think I remember. I know I must have had New Coke because that was like a thing. I know I was like I was probably around, but I don't remember what it tasted like.
I'm sure I tried it, but that's like the 80s. Like, I don't remember that. Well, one thing I do remember from the late 80s or early 90s. Do y'all remember like Crystal Pepsi?
Yeah, I love Crystal Pepsi.
Oh yeah, I remember like liking it when I was a kid, but like I don't know that it was flavored differently than Pepsi. It was clear.
No, I think it had some slight difference, but not like much.
When they did the reissue, I don't know what,
30 something.
Well, they did that re-release 8-10 years ago or something. It just tastes like regular Pepsi. Yeah, it just tastes like regular Pepsi.
I wasn't even aware of that. Here's something. Oh, this is gonna go back 20 years. Do either of you remember Pepsi Blue?
Yes.
Yes.
I always used to joke it was like, yeah, it was okay. It looked like Drano, but it was okay.
Oh, it was so sweet it made my teeth hurt.
Oh, that to me was literally the worst tasting. And I said this to people and I meant it. And like, this is fucking mouthwash. It tastes like mouthwash. And to me it did. Like, it's almost, other than the fact that a lot of mouthwash is like mint flavored, but it's like I could drink Pepsi Blue or Listerine and it's no difference really.
Yeah. And I think it's still
or
like
soda.
What is it? What was the Coca-Cola coffee? What was that called?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like that's a regular product in the Philippines. So Pepsi Blue is maybe a regular product in some other country. But yeah, I remember it. It was the only Pepsi I remember at the time drinking slowly because it was enough that I couldn't drink it fast.
Do you remember this is like 3 rebrands ago, but do you remember when Starry, which was Sierra Mist, used to be Slice back in the day?
Is that what it used to be? Like, Starry appeared like a couple years ago, and I'm like,
it replaced
what the hell is Starry?
It replaced Sierra Mist.
It replaced Sierra Mist was made with real sugar. Starry's made with corn syrup.
Is that all they did to change it?
That's what it is. That is exactly. Yeah. There was a whole thing about like, no, there's an influencer named Sierra Mist. Like, she ain't been an influencer for 15 damn years. Then Pepsi had the name first. Let's get over it. Yeah, they changed it because it's no, we'll make it with corn syrup now and call it Starry. And it's like, it don't taste the same. The Cranberry Splash Sierra Mist was like, that was my marker that the holidays have arrived. And then they quit making it. And I was like, damn it, I need my holiday hawk.
Was Surge an off-brand Mountain Dew?
I think it was made by Coke.
Yeah, I think that was it. I think it was like trying to hone in on the Mountain Dew market.
Because
let's take a pause and say that I actually like Mountain Dew, but the objectively best Mountain Dew flavor is Mountain Dew Baja Blast. Let's be
Yes,
honest.
it is.
It
and
is.
The Zero is pretty good too. But so then, because I was having that confusion because then Jolt was the double.
Jolt's a third brand.
Was the double caffeine, double sugar one, right?
And then there was one that was also called Nitro.
There was like the double Jolt, wasn't there?
Yeah, and then there was also one that was called Josta. That was supposed to be made with guarana root in it or something. By the way, Baja Blast Mountain Dew is one of the two beverages I can think of where the no sugar version tastes almost exactly like the original version does. It's pretty impressive.
They've never done a diet version. I do have a soft spot for Code Red Mountain Dew.
I did when it first came out, and then I didn't have any for a long time, and I had it again, and I'm like, nope.
Look, I haven't had a sugared soda in like 10 years, so I haven't had like a Code Red in probably 15 years, so I'm sure it sucks, but I do have a soft nostalgic spot for it.
I think there was a short run of Code Red Zero, but I couldn't swear to it.
Well, they took it off the market for a while, and I think they brought it back because people were like pissed at them.
They got that plug in Zombieland, man.
It was like that. I mean, it had a good 10, 15-year run for like what was a gimmick one.
Yeah. It was the first Mountain Dew quote-unquote flavor. So.
Yeah. If you actually go to the grocery store, because I mean, I go obviously frequently, there's probably like a half dozen different flavors of Mountain Dew. And it's like
there's
weird
always
flavors.
Yeah,
it's not. I mean, I enjoy diet. I only drink diet, but I diet Mountain Dew. And if you could find it, like diet Baja Blast, you can't find it everywhere. I've gotten it.
Taco Bell's your best.
Enjoyed it before.
Taco Bell's your best bet for. Gas stations are a good source. Gas stations are easier to find it at than like grocery stores, in my experience.
I find it at Meijer pretty easily. If I want to get it.
Chad, you notice I think actually somewhat popped up, at least in my somewhat geographic area. Not like it's like 5 minutes down the road from me, but in the DC metro area is Ollie's. And I'm like, we finally started getting Ollie's. Isn't Ollie's just basically like what Big Lots was? I think Big Lots.
It's what Big Lots used to be, but they don't have any pretensions about having their own brand.
Yeah,
which is what sunk Big Lots.
Yeah.
I don't. Did Big Lots close? I think
no, they're still around.
They're still around, but they did close a bunch of stores.
I still catch myself. This is aging me, but I still call them odd lots every now and then, because that's what they were when I was a kid.
They went by both names. So.
But like Big Lots is just like a basic store now.
Yeah,
You can find some good stuff at Ollie's though. Like the Columbus one closed, and I'm sad because like it was always a good source for like books.
If you're willing to sort through them.
Yeah, there was always a treasure or two there if you put the time in. A couple other odds and ends like some furniture and like camping stuff. It was always good for.
I bought a copy of the trade paperback of the Death of Superman series from Ollie's a few months ago because I was like, I used to have a copy of this. No, it wasn't the death of it was the death in return. It was the whole cycle.
And if you have a 5 and below that has like the $20 section, that's also an interesting little journey.
We just got a 5 below here, and I am completely unimpressed with it.
No, you don't like it?
Really? I think 5 below is fine. I don't always really need to go to 5 below, but I unfortunately have been to 5 below a lot because what they do have a lot of is slime. And my 5-year-old is obsessed with slime, which Chad has children. He may I'm surprised if I said slime, you're not like shuddering because
intentional decision.
Multiple outfits ruined by slime to the point where my daughter had to be like, you have a designated you
have a slime outfit.
Yes,
Yeah.
like put on your slime clothes because she has ruined my life with slime. Like as an adult, I'm like, God damn it! There's so many things that as a parent, you're like, nah. You either like no, absolutely not, or you're like no, no.
Yeah, we just did not let slime be part of our world.
Oh yeah. We've kind of like gotten away from it a little bit because she's not yet 2, but like the younger one, it's like, oh, you can't play with slime because the 2-year-old, like, she tried to eat it. It's like, it's almost like an excuse. Like, I don't want to play, and please don't do this. And I don't want.
Yeah.
Thank God we haven't been like she hasn't ruined the couch from it. But I'm digressing. But yes, like Five Below has a lot of slime, and so every time we go to Five Below, my 5-year-old like lights up. It's like, oh, can we get new slime? And it's like, oh god damn it. But it's one of the only places that actually has like a good candy section. So if you're like, I want a whatchamacallit, it's like you can't buy whatchamacallit in like the grocery store. Like they have that at Five Below though.
Yeah, they have a pretty extensive
friend of the show,
candy section.
Justin, friend of the show, has a love affair as I do with whatchamacallit.
I just
sell that.
I remember the
not here in America.
I sadly still remember the jingle for the commercial when I was a kid.
Whatchamacallit?
Yeah.
I think that's about going to cap us tonight, guys.
So next week, next week it's just going to be Shad and me. I don't think we're going to do anything like extensive or anything.
Yeah, I will be in the lovely state of Texas, San Antonio, for Thanksgiving. So Shad was just recently there, and Shad can attest that they have some good barbecue in San Antonio. Maybe I'll try to get some lucha masks, Shad. I'll try and get some
what?
Lucha
masks?
Lucha Libre. I actually have a collection. I have a collection of lucha masks that maybe I'll add to.
I've thought about that. Aside from the lucha mask that I had when I bought for a gimmick that I never did, but it's like, well, what kind of lucha masks would I get? Because there's just so many of them, and I'm like, I don't know where to start from, so I never have.
Well,
go downtown.
Well, that is it for this week. Thank you for joining us as always. We've been in 3 corners, and you've been in the 4th, and we will catch you next time.